The Cuban Revolution was brand new, and Robert Williams was among the first to recognize its impact. Very early on in the organizing in Monroe, he went to see Cuba for himself, and was one of the founders of the National Fair Play for Cuba Committee.
Robert first was invited to go to Cuba with 10 other writers and political activists to see what the Cuban Revolution had accomplished right after Fidel Castro came to power. But at that time, Cuba had not declared itself a leftist communist nation. They just invited some black scholars to come because they had made a lot of changes with the race issue. And when he came back, he was instrumental with some of the left people in New York to establish the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Robert began to travel for them all over the country to speak and trying to get our government at the time to recognize the Cuban government's legitimacy to exist and to have friendly relations with Cuba after the revolution.
And I returned to the United States from Cuba right after the triumph of the Cuban Revolution. A lot of white newspaper men met me at the airport in New York. And they said, but how could you, an American, how could you stand it in Cuba? How could you stand to hear them talking about Yankee go home, Yankee go home, U.S. imperialism? I told the man, I said, look, the man said Yankee. I'm not a Yankee. You have deprived me of everything on this earth that would make me a Yankee. Now when the man says Yankee go home, he's talking about you. And he's not talking about me. And I told him, I said, you know what? I felt good. I've never felt so good in my life. To be in a crowd of people of all shades, all kinds of people, and they all were standing up with their weapons, with their guns, and they said, Yankee, go home, and they meant it.
There was the rising tide of national movements in Africa, people rising up to try to take control of their own destiny. There were movements going on all over South America. The Native Americans were moving, and we were uniting with all of those people. Through our Crusader, we were able to publish what was happening in other movements and send our Crusader to these other movements so that they could see what was happening, not only with us, but what was happening in the uprisings going on all over the world. And as a result, we were building a whole network of people who were desiring change and internationalizing our full struggle.
Meanwhile, in Monroe, the struggle intensified. A major campaign began to integrate the town's tax-supported swimming pool.
We were picketing the swimming pool. The local swimming pool was segregated. It had been built with federal funds during the WPA program, but it was segregated. It was only for the white children. Well, a lot of our young black people had been drowning in unsupervised swimming holes over the years, and we had decided that we were going to ask for permission to use the pool. Well, the first thing they asked, Rob and the NAACP asked the city council if they would allow us to use the pool one day a week. They said, no. After the consultation, they could not do that. And Rob said, well, why couldn't we use it one day a week? They said, well, we'd have to drain the pool and wash it out before the white children could go in again. Then they went to the city council again and said, well, if you won't let us use the present pool once a week, will you build a pool in the black neighborhood for our children, because our children are drowning in unsupervised swimming holes? Well, the city council said, no, we don't have the money to build. At that point, Robert got irate. He was so angry.
They said that eventually they would build us a pool when they got the funds. So we asked them, when could we expect it? 1 year, they said no. We asked 5 years, and they said no, they couldn't be sure. We asked 10 years, and they said they couldn't be sure. And then we asked finally if we could expect it within 15 years. And they said that they couldn't give us any definite promise.
He said, well, if you don't have the money to build a separate pool for us, then you can't afford segregation, so we'll have to take other actions. So that's when we decided to start picketing the pool for the equal opportunity to use that pool.
While we were preparing the groundwork for possible court action, the Ku Klux Klan that had been somewhat undercover in Union County came out in the open. We didn't pay this much attention. The press started running articles about the Klan activity. That in the beginning they mentioned that 100, 150, sometimes 200 people would gather in open fields and they would have these rallies. Then the number kept going up. The number went up 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. The last estimate by the Monroe Enquirer estimated that 7,500 Klansmen had gathered in a field, and they were discussing these integrationists. They had hoped, just by virtue of sheer numbers, that this would frighten us out of the town. So they decided to take direct action. After these rallies, they would come through the community in motorcades, and they would honk their horns and fire pistols from car windows. On one occasion, they caught a colored woman on the street, on an isolated corner, and they made her dance at pistol point on the street in this colored community. And so a group of young men who were primarily veterans decided, since the city officials wouldn't stop the Klan, that we would stop the Klan ourselves. So we started a campaign of arming ourselves.
Well, one thing, in our hometown, the Klan recruiter was recruiting right out of the police station. The FBI as well was working right with the officials. When we would make a report, we go all the way to Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where the FBI office was. He would go and say, this is what the police has done, illegal things that the police is doing with black people. And they come to the sheriff's department but never get back to him. They'd tell the sheriff what Rob had said was going on. Klan activities going on. Rob would call and say, well, I'm sure you saw in the paper where they're getting ready to have a Klan rally at such and such a place, and the police are usually there to support the Klan. And the FBI said, well, oh yeah, well, okay, thank you. But they would come and tell the police that Rob had reported what was going on. And we found that out also after we got our Freedom of Information files, that the Klan was coming and talking with the chief of police, who was in cahoots with the Klan, was allowing the Klan leader to recruit in his police station.
Did the U.S. Justice Department go to the same chief of police that I had asked them to indict, the same chief of police that I had filed an affidavit against, the same chief of police that they knew had been my enemy and the enemy of Negroes and the friend of the Ku Klux Klan since 1956? Did they go to a Klan-sponsored chief of police to ask him for data on a civil rights fighter of the United States? Well, they most certainly did. And this should be enough to awaken many people to the fact that the Justice Department of the United States is fast becoming an arm of the Ku Klux Klan, of the John Birch Society, of the Minutemen, and all the racist groups of the United States.
And there were several attempts made on Rob's life. They tried to kill him. They tried to run him over. He had a little Hillman car, and we were on the way to picket that swimming pool one day, and a Klan car tried to bump him off the road. And it happened right in front of the state police post. And the state police were standing out watching what was going on. And they never once tried to intercede to stop it. An attempt on his life right in plain view of the state police, and they did nothing. It just happened that Rob was able to outmaneuver them and was reaching for his rifle. And so the Klan attackers just sped off. He reported it to the chief of police, and the chief of police told him, if you go and bring him in, we'll see if we can issue a warrant for him. So, you know, the collusion was there. They were working with the Klan. The FBI was working, supporting them. They were trying to preserve their system of segregation that had been enforced for so many years that was about to be cracked.
Negroes need not be told by any philosophy or by any political party that racial oppression is wrong, that racial oppression itself inspires the Negro to rebellion. And it is on this ground that the people of Monroe have protested. It is on this ground that the people of Monroe have refused to conform to the standards of Jim Crow life, of Jim Crow society. It is on this basis that they have struck out against inhumanity of racial prejudice.
The Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, August 14, 2026. So I have been told. This is our 6th installment on the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. We're picking up on chapter 37. I tried to mess us up last week right as I was going into or still dealing with my illness last week. Tried to mess us up and skip over chapter 37, which is very important. That is the Klan's first attempt to kill Robert F. Williams. So that's where we'll be picking up at this week. Also make sure I remind folks, not last week's audio where we almost missed a chapter, but not quite. But the week before, the 4th installment, the original audio upload, there was some distortion in the audio, made it kind of difficult to hear. I have since remastered the audio, so it should be perfect. You can download it, stream it, whatever the case may be, but it should be in the archives. The second accurate uploading of the audio for this series, so we'll have a complete set, no problems, no issues. You can go back, study, and get all the information. The audio that we heard today started off with Mabel and Robert Williams talking about their efforts. Actually, Robert Williams going to Cuba to study and not being, I guess, imbibing all of the rhetoric about communist Cuba, and we can't be, he's a threat to white capitalism, and they say down with the Yankees. We talked about that last week, and Robert being pressured by the NAACP about his stance on Cuba. I thought that was great to get that from the beginning, even though, again, that group Fair Play for Cuba Lee Harvey Oswald was a part of that group, and I have seen documents where it's alleged that that was a CIA front organization, as in this is a group that is supported, if not initiated, by the CIA, even though they hide their hands to make it look like they're not involved, type of a thing. Could be an error. They talked about the efforts to end the racist practices at the pools in North Carolina. Again, this is in like the beginning of the 1960s. We had Ben Rappaport as a guest on our program just a couple years back. He's talking about the exact same problem in North Carolina, except now they just did away with all the public pools, so there is nowhere to go to protest and picket because all the pools are closed, and white people just have access to all of the private pools. Man, and you still got disproportionate numbers of black people drowning. Anyway, the segment where Robert and these other black people are protesting the pools, the Klan galvanizes, we're going to support racism, keep these niggers out of our pools. And he talks about them increasing their numbers and then them going out to actually threaten black people with regards to, we're going to stop these protests. And we hear again about the Klan going and making this black female dance at gunpoint. I said, again, cowardice. You get a group of white ogres with guns and you're going to go challenge one black what I said last week. If you're tough, you go get that gun and make Rob Williams dance. These other black veterans who are out here being uppity anyway. No. You don't go get no black female, old and decrepit or whatever the case may be. Not that that's every black female, but I mean, hey, we heard Big Rob, 220 pounds, veteran, and I'm armed too. So you got a pistol, I got a pistol, mano a mano, as they say. Oh no, I don't want to do that. That's what cowardly, racist behavior. We heard Rob mentioned, speaking of cowards and racists, he talked about all these different groups, the Minutemen and the Klan and the John Birch Society. Hey, folks from the Katherine Massey Book Club, we read about Mary Kay Letourneau right here, Washington State history, and her dad down in California before she got up here, her dad in California being a part of the John Birch Society. We said then, racist organization. Yup. Last thing I'll get in before we get to the first attempt on Robert F. Williams, and he talked about he and Mabel talked about all of the collusion with the FBI, police department, Klan, just all of the racists working in conjunction for their network system of white terrorism and domination. But hearing Mahalia Jackson in the background, she is a contemporary of Robert F. Williams. Again, she sung briefly at the March on Washington in 1963 and was doing albums all during this time period, talking about racism, white supremacy that she experienced in Chicago. We'll hear Robert F.'s version of religion, maybe the religion of counter-racism, as we proceed. Katherine Massey Book Club, we will get to it. The Memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. Katherine Massey Book Club, audio segment 1.
I want to thank God for how He kept me. And I'm going to thank Him because He never left me. I'm going to thank Him for the whole time in it. Going to thank Him because He never left me. Oh, yeah.
Chapter 37. Pool protest reinitiated, violent backlash, and first attempt on my life. We were now experiencing escalated tension. Racial hatred was no longer submerged and disguised. It was so sharp and pronounced that one could feel it in the air all over the county. By now, I was being branded a communist troublemaker and no doubt had been designated the #1 target for destruction. Threats started arriving through the mail from many parts of the South. It was more obvious to me that to slide into inactivity at this point would cede the momentum to the racist and sign my own death warrant. In a move that seemed to represent a cynical, provocative challenge, the swimming pool was reopened on a for white-only basis. Relative to our complaints, the U.S. Justice Department had informed the media that investigations in the Monroe area had turned up no violations of civil rights. We felt this to be a latent blessing for the bigots who wanted to get rid of militant blacks. No doubt, as had been customary relative to Southern tradition, they expected us to get out of town, for our organization to fall apart, or to take the stance of a low profile, hoping the whites would allow us to stay alive. Again, we used the element of surprise. We established another picket line at the pool. This time, the bigots had become like wild, raging animals. The local media reflected the shrillness of the voices calling for violence. The crowds that assembled to intimidate and harass us grew bigger and bigger. In the ugly face of all kinds of threats of violence, the young teenagers who had asked me to lead them there never wavered. On Friday, June 23, 1961, I left the swimming pool and drove into Monroe to pick up a late picketer. I also checked with my wife, Mabel, and with the secretary of our branch, Mrs. Azalea Johnson, who were standing by to join us at the pool. I explained to them that the situation was getting very near the explosion point at the pool, and that they would be at great risk to join us there at that time. After giving in to their insistence to join us, I gave them my pistols to carry in Mrs. Johnson's car for their protection in case of an attack. I picked up 17-year-old Albert Rory, the tardy high school picketer, and we set out for the pool where other youths were already picketing. Heading east on Highway 74, we had just reached the crest of a long hill when a large black 1955 DeSoto sedan suddenly rammed into my little Hillman, a British subcompact, from the rear. My first thought was the belief that some freak accident had befallen us. I glanced into the rearview mirror, expecting a slowdown as I applied the brakes, but instead of diminishing speed, we were moving faster. I glimpsed a big white man behind the wheel of the DeSoto, guiding it as he pushed us forward. The first impact had been of such force that the front seats of my car had jumped off the tracks. I recognized the driver of the would-be killer car as a local Pontiac dealer, one of the Griffin brothers who owned the dealership. Every time I applied my brakes, the little Hillman would go into a skid. Fearful of losing control, I stepped on the accelerator in an effort to pull away. The bumpers were stuck together. Increasing his speed, Griffin began swerving back and forth, trying to force us off the highway at a 75-foot drop down onto a rail line. The cars had reached 70 miles an hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. All of this was taking place right near and in front of a highway patrol station. 2 state troopers were standing beside the road in the station yard witnessing the event. I started blasting on my horn to attract their attention. They looked, waved, and laughed. I became so enraged that all I can remember saying to Rory was, "I am going to kill this one. Give me my rifle. I am going to kill this one." Rory struggled and tugged feverishly at the rifle, but it was stuck under the seat. When the seat jumped the track, it had pinned the rifle to the floor of the car. At all times before this day, I had carried a Luger and a .45 in holsters and a gun belt on the seat of the car, but this day I had given the pistols to the women for their protection. As we approached the busy US 74 and 601 intersection, the Pontiac dealer gunned his motor in another attempt to ram our car into the heavy cross traffic. I made a final, desperate effort to disengage the car bumpers by braking and accelerating in rapid succession. I was able to create a violent, jerking motion on the Hillman. Just at the last moment, less than 30 yards from the crowded intersection, the bumpers wrenched apart. With a sudden, deep turn to the right, I was able to run my car off the road and into a shallow ditch without turning it over. As soon as I got the Hillman stopped, Rory and I pulled the broken seat off the carbine. I was still repeating, without any thought about anything else, that I was going to kill bigoted Griffin. By the time we were able to free the carbine, he had sped away. If it had been my fate to have my pistols on the seat, or if I had been able to get my rifle, I would have killed the racist for sure. We continued our return to the swimming pool, and once there, I approached Chief of Police A.A. Mowney, pointed to the smashed-in rear of my car, and exclaimed, "Do you see this? This was done by Byram Griffin, who tried to run us off the road and kill us. You saw me drive away, and you know that my car was all right when I left here. I have got his license number, and I want to take out a warrant for him." Standing a few feet away from the car, with the back all smashed in and oil running out of the damaged wheels and brake drum, the police chief said, "I don't see anything, Williams. I don't see anything at all. How can I arrest a man when there is nothing wrong with your car?" Our swimming pool picketing and the local situation surrounding it had become hot enough to attract a reporter from the Charlotte Observer. He had overheard the chief, and he stepped forward and volunteered, "I saw your car when you left for town a while ago. This must have just happened." Reacting to the statement of the reporter, Chief Mowney explained, "Okay, Williams, come on down to the station, and we'll discuss issuing a warrant." When I arrived at the station, Chief Mowney was standing behind the counter that separated working policemen from the general public who had business to be conducted there. The judge from the recorder's court was occupying a swivel chair near the entrance to the work area. Mowney glanced back at the judge, then looked at me with a contemptuous grin on his sun-baked face. He was short and fat, with a noticeable gap in his front teeth. His mannerism and tone of voice betrayed his feigned pretense of fulfilling the duties of an officer of the law. His deportment was typical of the standard rendition of the comic drama always available in the white man's repertoire of cruel jokes played on black Americans desperately in pursuit of justice. Mowney told me that the man I had named had sworn that he had been in his office all day and that he hadn't done anything to me. He said, "I can't indict a man just because you got his name and license number from somewhere. You and your witness go to his house. If you recognize him, bring him here, and then I will consider issuing a warrant." I knew the face of Byram Griffin. I had bought a youth's car from him. I also knew there was no place in Union County's American justice that required a white person to respect the civil and human rights of a black man. "I'm no policeman. You're supposed to be the police. It's your place to round up people like that. I'm not going to his house, but I can tell you one thing. You can tell him that he is one of the luckiest men in the world. The only reason that he is still alive is because my rifle jammed under the seat. Tell him that if he tries anything against me again, one of us is going to die." Chapter 38. The Swimming Pool Incident, Second Attempt on My Life. Eventually, the bigots grew tired of making cautious, unsuccessful attempts on my life. On Sunday, June 25th, 1961, they made their big move. When I left home, with 3 high school students on our way to join others who were already picketing at the swimming pool, I noticed a police car trailing us. As we approached the intersection, there were so many cars in the area that 2 policemen were directing traffic. Just as we entered the crossroads, an old 1949 Ford, which evidently, from its appearance, had been used in a car crashing derby because it was all banged up and all glass had been removed, came backing toward my car at full throttle. Ascertaining that the driver of the old wrecked truck had aimed at the driver's side of my already damaged Hillman, I turned sharply toward him and took the force of the collision with his front fender instead, causing both cars to end up in the ditch. As the dust cleared, the crowd of angry, screaming racists surged forward. The young, violence-prone white men who had driven the Ford came toward my stricken Hillman wielding a baseball bat. His eyes were aflame with hatred, and it was more than obvious that he and his fellow bigots were planning to commit the dastardly ritual of violence and lynching that was typical of their forefathers. Venting savage rage against helpless and defenseless black victims. However, today was not to be just another lynching, as usual, to inflate their statistics relative to the history of lynching in the free world. The would-be bigoted killer, who had missed in his first attempt, approached us, waving the baseball bat menacingly. He shouted angrily, "What did you hit my car for, nigger?" We sat in the car, momentarily stunned. The vast, angry white mob started to roar like a stormy sea. They were cursing, screaming, and moving even closer. I told 17-year-old Richard Crowder, who was sitting on the rear seat with 16-year-old J.D. Blunt, to pass me my carbine. I gave Richard my Luger and handed J. Van Covington, the other teenager, my Army .45 pistol. I instructed the students to watch me and not to shoot unless they saw me shoot. And if I did have to shoot, they should kill as many people as possible before they killed us. Having said this, I exited the car on the driver's side and leaned back against the car. The screams and curses of the crowd grew even more ferocious. The crowd started to throw stones against the car. Someone threw a black snake at the car. I felt an urgent need to ready my carbine. I shifted the bolt to slide a round into the chamber, not knowing that Richard had already injected a round into the chamber as he had passed the rifle to me. As I pulled the bolt back, a long 8mm military cartridge ejected to the ground. Members of the angry mob looked attentively at the long bullet, looked at the rifle, and then looked at me. I didn't say anything. I suppose my silence was even more demoralizing to them. After a vocal pause, as if by a prearranged signal, the crowd became noisy again. There were angry shouts. "The nigger is at fault. We saw it. The nigger ran into him." Then they started chanting, "Kill the niggers, kill the niggers, burn the niggers, pour gasoline on the niggers, burn 'em." The two policemen, who had been directing traffic not more than feet away, had previously seemed indifferent to what was going on. Suddenly, seeing the turn of events, they took note of us. One ran to the passenger side of the car, the other one headed straight for me. He confronted me. In a hostile voice, he demanded, "Surrender your weapon! Surrender your weapon!" He stretched his arm out for the rifle. I pushed the carbine broadside into his chest, forcing him backwards, and then aiming it straight into his face, I informed him, "This is a lynching mob. We will not surrender to a lynch mob. If you want this gun, you can come to my house and get it." The policeman on the passenger side started to pull his revolver from the holster. It was obvious that his intent was to shoot me in the back. Before he could complete the cycle, Jay put the Army .45 in his face and cocked it. His hand was trembling dangerously as he told the policeman, "Put that goddamn pistol back in your holster or I'll blow your goddamn head off." The stunned and frightened officer fumbled as he reholstered his gun, and fell into a ditch as he backed away. After witnessing this unique incident, an old white man started moaning, evidently full of liquor and deeply hurt from seeing the end to his way of life. He cried like a baby, "Oh my God! Oh my God! What is this goddamn country coming to? The goddamn niggers have got guns and the police can't even arrest them. Oh my God!" Still bawling, he was led away through the crowd. I am sure that at that very moment the old man saw his way of life slipping away right before his very eyes. The Southern white man had maintained the cruel and savage white supremacy status quo through unmitigated violence, underpinned by the gun. The gun was their last great bulwark, and without its effectiveness, their way of life would collapse forever. It was gone with the wind. Within moments, Chief Mauney drove up, and a city councilman named Steve Presson was with him. Steve Presson was an avid golfer who was considered so cantankerous that none of the caddies I had caddied with in my earlier youth wanted to caddy for him. When I saw his face, which always seemed to carry a frown, I expected our predicament to worsen. Contemplating imminent bloodshed, Steve Presson told Chief Mauney, "Open up this highway and let Williams and his people out of here before somebody gets killed." The chief retorted, "But they've got guns." Councilman Presson exclaimed, "I don't give a damn what they've got. Open up this road and let them out of here before somebody gets killed." In response to the councilman, Chief Mauney, with the other two policemen who had previously backed up the screaming mob, cleared a path for us to drive away. My car had been damaged from the impact of the demolition derby car. The crushed fender made an awful grinding noise as I drove away on the half-mile to the swimming pool. Above the intense noise of the banged-up car, the mob, made up mostly of poor whites, became highly animated with angry jeers and screams of, "There ain't gonna be no integration here. Niggers go back to Africa. We ain't gonna swim with no niggers. Kill the niggers. Pour gasoline on the niggers. Burn the niggers." Arriving at the pool, I discovered that several youths were walking the picket line around the pool in stoic defense of the angry, threatening mob. Some city and council officials had come on the scene. The Monroe Police Force and the County Sheriff's Department had been combined. They had 23 uniformed policemen on duty there, and the chief maintained they were unable to keep order. He proclaimed that the crowd was out of control and that there was nothing that he or his men could do. It was more than obvious that the local power structure had planned a final showdown, and no doubt this was to be the final solution. On both sides of Highway 601, a screaming mob stretched for more than a mile. Someone had mobilized the entire county as it had never been mobilized before. No doubt a modern lynching had been promised, and those who didn't care to participate had come to see the great Southern drama staged. The situation was so explosive that I opted to remain near the car and my guns rather than joining in the picketing. The crowd of screaming racists completely blocked Highway 601. They were tightening the ring around us, the car and the picketers. As the circle around us became smaller and smaller, Chief Mauney approached me and demanded, "Surrender your guns." I shouted right back, "No, these guns are legal. This is a lynch mob. We will not surrender to a mob. If you want these guns, you can come to my house and get them, but not here." He exclaimed, "Robert, God damn it, if you hurt any of these white people, I'm going to kill you myself. Surrender your guns. Surrender your guns." He kept repeating over and over as if he had become crazed with frustration. The crowd roared with more sanctioned, vicious outcries of, "Kill them, kill the niggers, pour gasoline on the niggers, burn the niggers." Holding my Italian carbine at a high port, I told Mauney that if the crowd came any closer, he would never get the chance to kill me, because if they kept coming, he was going to be the first one to go. Councilman Steve Preston approached me again. I had resigned myself to a state of kill and be killed until the only reasonable white man returned, seeking desperately for a peaceful solution. He said, "Robert, I know y'all have a right to picket, but the situation is getting out of hand. If you're willing to call it off for today, I'll see to it that the police escort you and your people back home." "The police?" I responded. "We might as well be escorted by the Ku Klux Klan. The only way I'll go with the police is if Mounty rides in the car with me, and if anything goes wrong, he will be the first one to go." Chief Mounty quickly responded, "No, sir, I ain't about to ride with that crazy nigger." The raging crowd of hate inched closer. I explained to the chief that if they kept coming and I just got off one shot, the bullet was bound to pass through at least 6 people in the crowd, and the blood of at least that many whites would be on his hands. With Mounty and me contemptuously eyeballing each other, and the crowd growing even louder and wilder, Steve Preston was visibly worried and asked, "What do you want me to do, Robert?" I suggested that since the local police would not maintain order, then he should ask the State Highway Patrol to come in. Preston seemed relieved at the suggestion and hurried off to make the call. I anticipated the state troopers making a grand appearance with sirens wailing and lights glaring from a motorcade with an impressive number of troopers. I was both surprised and puzzled when a single state police car arrived on the scene with only 2 troopers inside. It was a strange sight to see, this odd couple approaching us. There was a very small man who wore corporal chevrons on his sleeves. His hair was gray, and he looked too old to be a state trooper. I had never before seen such an old person still on duty as a state trooper. A big, husky young man with a long truncheon followed closely behind him. The crusty little old trooper came straight up to me and asked if we were ready to go. The chief of police told him that we were heavily armed. The trooper paid no attention to the chief. After ascertaining that we would leave if the way was cleared and secure, he confronted the angry crowd and told them to open up the highway. The crowd paid no attention to him. He repeated the order. The 23 local officers looked on silently. The feisty little corporal informed the would-be lynch mob that they were blocking a state highway and demanded in a loud, clear, decisive voice, "Clear the goddamn road. Move out now." Many of the racists laughed and cursed in disbelief, no doubt feeling that there was some latent understanding that there would be no police intervention while they attacked the blacks. The corporal turned to the big trooper with the truncheon and commanded him to open up the highway. The young trooper started swinging his club as he moved deliberately toward the crowd. Convinced that the state police were not a part of any conspiracy, the crowd moved back quickly. They opened up the highway. The state trooper told us to follow close behind his car, and he ordered the chief to drive closely behind us to prevent any problem. With one police car in front and another in the rear, we started to drive through the mob. Blacks had never before been given such protection, and this particular sight irritated the racists to no end. Not understanding that the entire state maneuver was staged to protect them from us rather than us from them, the crowd started angrily shouting, "Look how they are supporting these goddamn niggers. Look at the police guarding those communist coons." The police cars escorted our car to the front of my house. The little corporal waved and drove off into the distance. He didn't stop and ask for my guns, nor did I ever see him again. Full of anger, after being unable to get their way with us, the agitated racist resorted to the old Southern custom of attacking every available and defenseless black person within range. During the rest of the day, those unfortunate enough to drive past the crossroads had their cars stoned. One black man was rumored to have been pulled from his car, tied to a tree, and severely beaten. I was never able to confirm this, but such is the hazard of blacks living in America. Race hatred and violence are always just beneath the surface, and when we travel, we never know when we will run into racial trouble over which we have no control. Innocence is irrelevant when a mob becomes violent and bloodthirsty. Any black blood will do, and that was the pattern followed that Sunday in Monroe. Scattered gunfire could be heard throughout the day and into the night. It was always in the distance because the bigots dared not invade our community again. They knew that we were willing and quite able to defend our homes and ourselves. Chapter 39. Reign of Terror. A powder keg ready to blow in Monroe. As the heat of the summer increased, so did the incidents of violence. Blacks suffered some nasty and unprovoked attacks. The ones who were attacked were primarily the defenseless. I am sure if we had not displayed a will to fight, there would have been considerably more tragic incidents. One evening, a member of our defense team, Otha Wynn, and his wife visited Hilltop Restaurant seeking food service. They were attacked by a large group of racists. He was caught outside his car because it was necessary for Afro-Americans to go up to the back window of the establishment to obtain service. Otha fought his way back to his car. His wife passed him his pistol off the seat. He shot one of his attackers in the buttocks, and the others scattered like frightened dogs. Evidently, the racists were greatly embarrassed by the feat of a lone black man routing a group of white men. We expected them to press charges, but instead they sent an emissary to make a request for Wynn to pay the wounded man's hospital bill. Otha flatly refused to pay and told them the son of a bitch is lucky he didn't get killed. The incident was kept quiet because such an incident would have damaged the Klan's image. By midsummer, racist attacks grew in number and intensity. As a result of the stepped-up incidents of terror, I made an urgent appeal for justice in the Crusader, which we were now publishing weekly. Our publication was catching on like wildfire. Our mailing list and correspondence had become international, and I was charging that the Monroe City officials, the local agents of the FBI in Charlotte, and the governor of North Carolina were jointly involved in a conspiracy to terrorize Afro-Americans and subjugate them to white supremacy, thus negating our constitutional rights. We had allowed our defense guard to become practically no more than a standby group, but now it had become necessary for us to prepare for combat once again. As our story became more widely known because of the Crusaders' circulation, all kinds of people were offering support, though because of our militant attitude, we were never in much favor with members of the Communist Party. They thought the philosophy of Reverend Martin Luther King to be the only acceptable way to struggle against U.S. racism. Their theoreticians argued that my method would drive a wedge between white and black workers. They expressed a belief that blacks should struggle side by side with white workers for socialism. It was their belief that once the USA became a socialist country, the white workers would liberate the black fellow workers. They claimed, contrary to what we Southern blacks knew, that socialism would eliminate racism. Though we had our differences with the communists, our backs were to the wall, and we sought support from all quarters. Two representatives of the U.S. Communist Party surfaced in Monroe, and at one of our greatest times of need brought us a scheme that involved Nikita Khrushchev. They presented us with a list that they claimed had already been approved in Moscow. We were told that Mr. K, had already been apprised of our plight and was willing to help us. We were informed that if we made a worldwide appeal for humanitarian aid, the USSR could be counted on to respond favorably. We were cautioned not to make a direct appeal to the USSR alone, but to the entire world. We were told to canvass the town and county, poor as to their greatest needs. It was indicated to us that the Soviets would have foodstuffs, medicines, clothing, mules, and tractors ready to send to us. We were highly elated at such an offer. This was really an effective way to light a fire under an indifferent, racist government that had refused to respond to our poignant cries to be addressed as human beings. This was planned to be a great masterstroke initiated on behalf of suffering and dehumanized Afro-Americans. By the time that we had brought a committee together and were preparing a press release, our two communist sponsors reappeared on the Monroe scene. We were told that Mr. K did not want to do anything now that might prove embarrassing to the USA and that could very well cast a shadow over détente. The fickleness of the communists had dampened our hopes and left us as exposed as ever. Although a fender had been smashed and a headlight knocked out of my small British car, I was still able to use it in making deliveries of the Crusader. The Crusader was being delivered locally on Saturdays. More and more, we were being shadowed by police cars. The police were making note of who supported our publication, just as employers were watching workers to see who was sleepy on the job and thus possibly could be identified as members of our security guard. After one of our Saturday deliveries, I was stopped by the police 3 blocks from my house. It so happened that I was stopped with great fanfare in front of Reverend J.J. Lomax's home. The police informed me that I was operating a motor vehicle without my lights being on. He said my lights were defective. He was fully aware that the mob had watched as my car had been wrecked at Hilltop on the way to the pool demonstration. Reverend Lomax was sitting in his yard under a shade tree. I loudly called out, asking him if it was night or day. He answered, "Of course, Robert, it is day. Why do you ask such an obvious question?" I told him that this policeman was saying that it was night. He laughed and replied, "Oh no, it is definitely daylight, Robert." The demeanor of the 2 policemen was hostile indignation. After some verbal exchange, I was given an option of being hauled off in their patrol car to the police station or following them in my car that they had already declared unfit to be on the road because of broken lights. I opted for driving behind them to the station. After being given an order to follow close behind them, I acceded to their flawed legality based on their propensity to harass me and to interfere with the delivery of the Crusader, and followed the patrol car for almost 2 blocks. We crossed the intersection at Fairley Avenue and English Streets. The next intersection was Fairley Avenue and Boyd Street. I lived on Boyd Street, halfway up the block. This was precisely why I had offered to follow the 2 policemen to the station in my own car. As they crossed over Boyd Street, and as I approached it, I shifted gears, accelerated, and made a sharp left turn toward my house. Blasting the car horn, I sped around my house and stopped near the back door. The back door was locked as usual. The police car had turned around and at a breakneck speed had followed me into my backyard. I owned a very ferocious German shepherd named Little Rock. The dog was on a chain leash. The sight of the officers invading the yard had provoked a temper tantrum on the part of the dog. I tried to release him to ward off the police, but he was exerting so much pressure pulling on his chain toggle that I was unable to free him. My wife, Mabel, opened the back door. She was armed with a 12-gauge shotgun. I called to my 10-year-old son, Bobby, to bring my rifle. My wife asked the policemen what they wanted with me. They informed her that I was going to be taken in for operating a motor vehicle with defective lights. She asked them if they had a warrant for my arrest, and when they answered in the negative, She told them that they had better get out of our yard until such time that they did have one. The commotion drew a crowd of armed black friends from the neighborhood. As the crowd swelled and surrounded the policemen, their nervousness and fear became very much obvious. Armed with my 8mm semi-automatic Mauser rifle and surrounded by armed friends, I ordered the hate-motivated, illegal cops out of my yard. I told them that I wanted to hear their wheels spinning until they got out of the block, or else I was going to blow their asses up. And if they wanted me, they had better bring a warrant. They left so fast with their wheels spinning that the smell of burning rubber filled the air. A senior citizen neighbor, Mrs. Gregory, lived across the street from us, and next door to her lived Mrs. King, who was like a surrogate mother to my family. Mrs. Gregory called to Mrs. King, who was standing with her arms folded on her front porch watching the unfolding events. "Lizzie, did you see that? Lord, I ain't never in my life seen a colored man talk to the police like that. They left here flying like scared dogs." "Yeah, I saw them leave here flying," Mrs. King replied. "These young Negroes just ain't gonna take what we took. They've been in the army, and they ain't scared of nothing." The police failed to come back with a warrant, and nothing else was ever said about my lights, which the police had witnessed being knocked out, while the chief claimed that he couldn't see any damage to my car and had refused to issue a warrant for the bigots who had wrecked the car and made an attempt on our lives. The news was spreading that Monroe was one of the hottest spots in the USA. It was common knowledge that Union County was a powder keg waiting to explode. The situation had become so tense that one could feel the tension permeating the entire environment. I kept fighting off a feeling of impending doom and resigned myself to probable loss of life. If it was to be my fate to go, I wanted to go out with a big bang, accompanied by a score of bigots. I felt the example would be worthwhile. There most certainly was a need to inspire black youth to break out of the narrow confines of turn-the-other-cheekism. Nonviolence, to me, was a guarantee to violent races that they could visit all kinds of hurt upon us with complete impunity. Mysterious fires continued to plague the town. The fires were primarily in the white section of town, and they all seemed to be industrial in nature. Suspicion became more prevalent as a bigot started spreading the word publicly that Williams was the arsonist. It seemed to frustrate them to no end to always find me at home during fires that flared in the night. One of the few fires that occurred in the black community claimed a night spot operated by a black teacher who had written letters to the white papers asking supporters throughout the United States to stop sending us guns and other contributions. She claimed that Monroe was a peaceful town where the races had gotten along beautifully until I started stirring up trouble. A few days after her letter was published, her juke joint burned down. The bigots and their fellow traveling Uncle Toms were spreading the rumor so intensively that I was behind the fires that I deemed it necessary to advise, if any of our people are setting those fires, I don't want to know about it. An arson charge is something that we cannot handle. Arson is not our thing. The risk is too great. It is a wrong tactic for us at this time, unless our situation becomes so desperate that we decide to go down and take the town with us. It may happen, but we will stick to self-defense as long as we can. Chapter 40. Broadening the Scope of Struggle. 10-point program. During the summer, many blacks, including heads of families, were laid off so the local white high school and college students on vacation could take their jobs and earn extra spending money. With many young blacks unemployed and milling aimlessly around the town, most black graduates were forced to break family and neighborhood ties and migrate in quest of a more promising life. The Union County Industrial Development Commission was following the new trend in the South. It was using public tax money to facilitate concessions offered to attract northern industry running from unionized and more costly labor in the North. Blacks were employed only in the lowest paying and most menial positions in this industry. Actually, local bigots insisted that the incoming industries accede to the status quo and not spoil local coloreds by raising their expectations, thus transforming a surplus labor pool. We were being taxed the same as whites and felt we were being robbed to subsidize white employment. Being denied access to public facilities was a denial of a civil right that cut deep into our human pride. But the denial of the right of employment was tampering with our right of survival and the right to live worthwhile and productive lives in the development of our full potential. We were no longer content to live and respond as the white man's shadow, as some bigots thought we were created to be. I had come to feel that the struggle throughout the South was too limited and much too narrow in directing most of our primary effort toward public facilities. On August 15, 1961, our NAACP branch, represented by Dr. Albert E. Perry Jr., John W. McDowell, and me, presented a 10-point program to the Monroe Board of Aldermen. It reads as follows. 1. Induce factories in this county to hire without discrimination. 2. Induce the local employment agency to grant non-whites the same privileges given to whites. 3. Instruct the welfare agency that non-whites are entitled to the same privileges, courtesies, and consideration given to whites. 4. Construct a swimming pool in the Winchester Avenue area of Monroe. 5. Remove all signs in the city of Monroe designating one area for colored and another for whites. 6. Instruct the superintendent of schools that he must prepare to desegregate the city schools no later than 1962. 7. Provide adequate transportation for all school children. 8. Formally request the State Medical Board to permit Dr. Albert E. Perry Jr. to practice medicine in Monroe and Union County. 9. Employ Negroes in skilled or supervisory capacities in the city government. 10. Act immediately on all of these proposals and inform the committee and the public of your actions. Signed, Robert F. Williams, Albert E. Perry Jr., Medical Doctor, John W. McDowell. Some days before the presentation of our 10-point program, I met with Dr. Perry on the Mecklenburg-Union County line because, despite the fact that he had been paroled out of Caledonia prison, he was still not allowed to cross into Union County where his wife and friends lived. Doc, as we called him, informed me that an aide of Governor Terry Sanford had approached him. The aide was a black man known as Dr. Larkin. He had engaged the influence of Dr. Perry to step up a discreet meeting with me. If Doc could swing the meeting, they would allow him to host the meeting at his home in Monroe. It would be his first opportunity to visit his home since his release from prison. Doc told me up front that the state had offered him some concessions if he would promise to come home and pull on my coattail. I agreed to the arrangement. We needed his medical services among our people, and we wanted him back home. Dr. Perry called me on the appointed night to inform me that he and Dr. Larkin were already in town and at his house. I surveyed the area for a possible ambush before entering Dr. Perry's house from the darkened area. Dr. Larkin was sitting on the sofa behind a sizable coffee table. Dr. Perry introduced us, and I removed my Army gun belt that holstered the Army .45 and the 9mm Luger, placed the guns on the coffee table, and set my 8mm semi-automatic Mauser on the floor in front of us. "Do you want to talk to me?" I asked, glancing down at the guns and displaying apprehension that he was trying hard to conceal. He informed me, "Williams, The governor has taken a great interest in you. He feels that you and your family deserve more, so he sent me to find out what he can do for you, and what do you want?" "That's mighty nice of him," I said. "Tell him if he really wants to help me, I suggest he move to push through our 10-point program. Tell him I've already outlined what I want in the 10 points. "Oh, no, he doesn't mean help you in that way. He wants you to withdraw the 10 points. He wants to know what you want personally." "I can't withdraw the 10 points. They are not mine. They belong to the people. But anything he wants to give me in addition to the 10 points, I would appreciate very much, because I am a very poor man." "The governor also wants you to stop wearing those guns around town. He knows that you have a legal right to do what you are doing, but you are setting a bad example before other citizens." "You tell the governor that there is a breakdown in law and order here, and until such time that there is a 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution introduced here, I will be wearing these guns." The meeting ended with Dr. Larkin making a seemingly veiled threat, saying, "The governor is going to be upset when I report back to him." Later, however, the state did relax some of the restrictions that had been placed on Dr. Perry. They let him move home to Monroe to pull on my coattail. They partially restored his license to practice medicine. He could live in Monroe, but he could only practice medicine across the county line in Charlotte. No one had ever heard of a doctor being barred from practicing in his home county where most of his patients lived. That was the lowest form of racism. Many of our people were too poor to pay for medical attention, and Doc administered to them without remuneration. To cut medical attention off from a deprived community that experienced much illness because of a depressed standard of living was just a step away from flirting with genocide.
Medical apartheid. Katherine Massey Book Club. Alrighty, we'll pick up audio segment 2 on chapter 41. Nonviolent tactics are acceptable so long as they don't require sacrificing our human dignity. Heard that word again this week, dignity. Let's see, number to dial, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The email, untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. Can share your thoughts anonymously if you have questions as we mosey on through the text. We are almost encroaching on the halfway point. It didn't seem like we'd made that much progress, but we have. I'm not exactly sure where this chunk of the book ends and then Mabel Williams' memoir picks up, but we are closing. Chapter 41. We have made progress. 40 chapters. Let's see. Make sure I give. It had been on my mind since last week. The late Jonathan Farrell. Is that name familiar? Black male in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, same region that we're talking about right around Monroe in North Carolina, way back summer of 2013, really the end of the summer of 2013. Young black male at an HBCU, college student, had vehicle difficulties. He was not under the influence, not doing anything incorrect, just had vehicle difficulty. Unfortunately, it was late at night. Dr. Cambon does talk about that. Also, North Carolina resident, Dr. Cambon. But it was late at night. He went, knocked on a white person's house for assistance. White woman said, "Oh my goodness, beastly, raping, Negro male." She calls the police, and just like Jesse Helms Sr., tough on the Niggras, they show up immediately and bang, 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 bang. No help, no nothing, and all the rest of it. I think they had a trial a year later. I'm not even sure if the officer was convicted. Might have been another one of those justified. I'd have to go back and verify what happened with the trial. But the late Jonathan Farrell, still kind of dangerous. Benny Montgomery, Jonathan Farrell, very dangerous being a black dude in the Carolina region. I don't know. Mike Jordan might not even have it much better. I don't know. Let's see. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, and then we'll get to some of the emails as well. And they still got the same issues in North Carolina with the swimming pools. Can't say that enough. All this talk about the swimming, that's where they were going to kill Rob at. Hey, they ain't made no progress there either. It's not just that we've talked about pools over and over, and even Mama C, who is right there, South Carolina, who went and got her pool certification, wink, wink, went and got her pool certification. But that was part of the motivation in seeing black people and all of these pool deaths and close calls and all the rest of it. We're not even talking about Nolan Wells, Daniel Irvin. We're not even talking about that. But all of these suspicious pool deaths and no lifeguard, and we don't have a pool, so they go out in the lake and all the rest of it. They've been talking about all this stuff for the last 60 years. And as I said, in North Carolina, now the racist protocol is, we'll fix your wagon, Rob, and you won't have no public pools to come and protest and act a fool and mess up our sun. We just ain't gonna have no public pools. Now you can go picket the closed, emptied out pool. Go picket that. Have fun. Do it all day long. The problem, system of white supremacy. We made no progress. Our caller, 5962. If you have commentary to share, proceed.
Yes, sir. May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Again, I just noted pretty much our theme of the book, just the common cowardliness of white people throughout this whole struggle. After the pole incident and the ramming of his car and all of that, when Robert Williams decides to defend himself armed as best as he can, and other members defending themselves, they wait until they're sure that people are traveling here and there and that they're able to white people are able to confront them and beat on them and yank them out of their cars and stone their cars, knowing that they're unarmed and won't face any resistance. I just noted that. I noted the one sentence, I think that's in chapter 38, where it says that the gun was their last great bulwark, and without its effectiveness, their way of life would collapse forever. It just made me think of that clip you play commonly of Dr. Francis Creswell saying about understanding the gun mania and the great equalizer. The next thing that I noted was that the white people's shock, that especially that the older white male that he was talking about, where Robert has the gun, and Chief AA tries to get it from him, and he's in shock that oh my God, what's going on in this country where black people have guns and the police can't even take it from them or arrest them. So apparently he knows that this isn't standard protocol, and they shouldn't be. Robert and his people shouldn't be able to wield guns like that. And then the other thing I noted was his relationship with Mr. K of the USSR. If I'm not mistaken, that's really close to the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I just wonder how much Robert Williams knew about that crisis, and if he had any actions that he took place in that. And that's all I have.
Much obliged. That is true. All of that with Khrushchev, it reminded me of one of the best documentaries ever, soundtrack to a coup d'etat. Khrushchev is one of the central figures in that documentary, and really it's kind of the same premise that we heard, except you substitute Patrice Lumumba in the Congo for Robert F. Williams in Monroe, North Carolina, where you can get so-called Soviet aid and arms to help you fight racism, white supremacy, aka colonialism in the Congo. Same type of thing. This is a white man. I didn't have any confusion about that. This is a white man. So, and you heard some of that, depending on so-called white allies for assistance, what can happen, just what we heard from Robert F. This week. Certainly the theme of cowardice, mighty, in my view, that's one of the massive themes and I would say cowardice of white people first and foremost. I think that's dominant, but I do think secondary, and it is a product, because we're in a system of white supremacy racism, so everything is a product, reflects that system. I do think a secondary theme is the cowardice of black people. And I mean, wow, that sentence from last week, and I think even though he doesn't express it as succinctly, as explicitly as he did last week, where you have all these timid, unmanly black dudes who will smack around a black female or another black dude or their children. We will do all of that. But then it's, hey, we got to be loving, nonviolent with old Jesse Helms Sr. We got to be loving, forgiving, turn the other cheek with old Griffin. What? And he called out that hypocrisy. I think that is a major secondary theme of this text as well, for sure. Let's see, email number 1. Chapter 37. The swimming pool was reopened, on a for white-only basis. Relative to our complaints, the U.S. Justice Department had informed the media that investigations in the Monroe area had turned up no violations of civil rights. Racist white supremacists never give up. Absolutely. That's why 2026, they just drained and closed all the public pools. 2, I recognize the driver of the would-be killer as a local Pontiac dealer, one of the Byram Griffin brothers who own the dealership. Griffin Motor Company is still in operation in 2026. I saw the same thing. They have a phone number listed in Monroe. I think it's now GMC Buick as opposed to Pontiac. GMC Buick in Monroe, passed down. Now you can even imagine that is generations of white power where they control employment and all the rest of it in a very small region. He told us it was about 3,000 people at that time. I'd have to look and see what the current population in that area is, but generations of white domination. Chapter 38, even Robert F. said, man, I bought a used car from the Griffins. I bet it's generations of black people who have bought vehicles from the Griffins. Chapter 38, second attempt on my life. Sunday, June 25. His eyes were aflame, gave Richard my Luger, and handed J. Van Covington, the other teenager, my Army pistol. I instructed the students to watch me and not shoot unless they saw me shoot, and I did not have to shoot. If I did not have to shoot, they should kill. If I did have to shoot, they should kill as many people as possible before they killed us. We will not surrender to a lynch mob. If you want this gun, you can come to my house and get it. On both sides of the highway, a screaming mob stretched for more than a mile. Much of this text reads like the tale of a comic book superhero, another example of the Voltron effect. A truncheon is a police stick, a.k.a. the nigger knocker. C.O.W.S. guest Norm Stamper, author of Breaking Rank, the first time he was a guest on the program, although he's back with us repeatedly. I can only say I cannot imagine, like, the sight of this and not wanting to turn and run. I mean, he could have easily been killed. Easily. All it would have taken, you have a mob of white people. I'm very sure at least one of, if you got that many white people stretching back that far, I'm sure at least one of those white people had a firearm. At least one. He could have easily been killed in that environment. Easily. Or whoops. And I mean, they could have said that, whoops, my finger slipped. Whoops. You know. And he would have had the whole army of white people. Yeah, that's right. Whoops. He slipped. It was an accident. We saw it. To face down all of that, no flinch, and even exactly what Fuller said, and I mean to the letter of what Fuller said for counterviolence. I can't take no more. My plan is to take as many racists off the planet as I can, and I go too. He said it almost verbatim. I'm out of here too. I'm going to take as many of them with me, and I'm going to. Wow. Wow. And even discipline. I can't imagine being the students in all of this as well. Teens. Can you imagine you're 17, 18, and you're with Rob, you're Jay Van Covington, and Richard, and all right, you see all these race soldiers. You hold on. I start shooting. You kill as many of them as you can before they get us. What? What? That is stunning. I mean, wow. Let's see. Chapter 39, Reign of Terror. Otha Wynn and his wife visited the Hilltop restaurant seeking food service. They were attacked by a large group of racists. He shot one of his attackers. Request for Wynn to pay the wounded man's hospital bill. I could not find any newspaper articles online regarding. I don't know, have to look and see. With all of, well, he did say, unless I'm mistaken with that section, he did say that the Klan kind of hushed this one up. I'll make sure I'm not in error, but I think he said that they kind of hushed this one up because it was embarrassing, that they didn't want it, that, hey, you know, these Niggras then got the best of us on this one. Like, hey, shh, don't be, you know, blowing this one up and bragging about this one. You embarrass us. I have to go back and check, but that also, I thought that was important. If it's that incident specifically, and some of the others where similarly Rob and these other black veterans and black people who were not, you know, turn the other cheek, we're going to fight back, where they got the best of these the white people didn't come and make them dance. White people didn't come and smack them around and laugh when we raped all of y'all and you no count black people are chumps and all the rest of it, and that didn't happen. When they, you know, Rob and them, hey, we done made these Klan members turn tail and run and show that they yelling. They didn't want to fight, and hey, they didn't make no Niggras dance this time. They said that, shh, we don't want to embarrass. And it just stood out to me because I've heard that before. I think even with Frederick Douglass, he said the same thing. Yep, I was correct. I found it. It's right at the beginning of chapter 39, right underneath all that. He says, we evidently, the racists were greatly embarrassed by the feat of a lone black man routing a group of white men. We expected them to press charges, but instead they sent emissary to make a request for Wynn to pay the wounded man's hospital bill. Otha flatly refused to pay and told them the son of a bitch is lucky he didn't get killed. That incident was kept quiet because such an incident would have damaged the Klan's image. I've heard this over and over and over. All the way back, like I said, Frederick Douglass, that's in his autobiography. When they sent out the slave breaker to go and beat him down, Frederick Douglass said the same thing. I'm not with all that turn the other cheek and everything. He did the same thing. He pulled and got the advantage and almost choked out that slave driver. That white man didn't go back and tell everybody that nigger is dangerous. We're going to have to kill that Fred, because that would have messed his reputation up too. He didn't say anything about it. Frederick Douglass got to go on, live a long, prosperous life, and didn't even have to be a direct plantation slave for the duration. But I've heard this over and over and over, examples where a black person gets the best of a white person, especially physically. Even that's why we're reading this book. They did that with Robert F. Lots of people say, Negroes with guns. Robert F. Williams, Mabel Williams, who I ain't never, what? Kissing case, they said that last week. That was with the kissing case. Kissing, what? I ain't know what that, I don't know. Matter of fact, ask North Carolina's finest. Ask Michael Jordan. Have you heard of the name Robert F. Williams? North Carolina grad. He might have left early. I may have to retract. He might not necessarily be a North Carolina grad, but he certainly is UNC alumnus, Chapel Hill. Do you know who Robert F. Williams is? If you had to give us 5 paragraphs, flagship University of North Carolina, if you had to give us, not 5 paragraphs, my fault, that's almost getting to a thesis. If you had to give us 5 sentences on what you know in the import of Robert F. Williams to the state of North Carolina, what would you say? 5 sentences. I would be very curious to hear. Even Michael Jordan's offspring. Continuing. Let's see. The Crusader, which we were now publishing weekly, our publication was catching on like wildfire. I don't like that metaphor. We had all that soot in the air. Our mailing list and correspondence had become international. The importance of the black press, here, newspapers, etc., has been continually discussed on the cows for many years. I applaud Gus for his excellent reporting from the trials of the Tops Supermarket massacre and the Sade Robinson murder. Ongoing. This week, the convention of the National Association of Black Journalists is meeting in Atlanta. I don't think President Trump will be giving a video appearance. I seriously doubt it. He was so hostile when he was there before. Anyway, and some of them were upset. Never mind, diversion. Sorry. 3. Philosophy of Reverend Martin Luther King. Dr. King armed himself for a period of time. See MLK's relationship with guns was more complicated than you think between King and guns. The Philadelphia Citizen, we talked about this explicitly. It's mentioned in Charles Cobb's book, That Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed, where he talks about the exact same thing, where all these folks with all this nonviolent rhetoric, Bob Moses and all the rest of it, yeah, I'm not giving up my stuff. These race soldiers are out of control, and you all can do all that, turn the other cheek. And he even talked explicitly how a lot of this so-called nonviolence, turn the other cheek, would not have been possible without armed black people like Robert F. Williams. It would not have even been possible to go out and say, yeah, we're not going to fight back, turn the other cheek. And thank God, because we would have all been killed trying to turn the other cheek. They would have put the target right on their face, jawbone, and kerpow. Let's see. 4. Representatives of the U.S. Communist Party brought us a scheme that involved Nikita Khrushchev worldwide appeal for humanitarianism. We were told that Mr. K did not want to do anything now that might prove embarrassing to the USA and that could very well cast a shadow over Detente. The fickleness of the communist white people had dampened our hopes and left us as exposed as ever. Should not be surprising given that you are dealing with suspected racist white supremacists. Facts. 5. Although a fender had been smashed and a headlight knocked out of my small British car, it was not a small African car, symbolic of the fact that we are in a global system of white supremacy, and for reals, 2026, it would be about the same. It certainly would not be an African car. Maybe, right, you could, I guess, have a Honda or something like that, but generally speaking, ain't gonna be no African car or no foundational black American car neither. 6. I owned a very ferocious German shepherd named Little Rock. Sight of the officers invading the yard had provoked a temper tantrum on the part of the dog. See C.O.W.S Book Club selection, White Dog by Romain Gary. Amongst many others talking about those no counts, and that one specifically, the German shepherd. 7. Mabel opened the back door. She was armed with a 12-gauge shotgun. She asked them if they had a warrant for my arrest. Lizzie, did you see that? Lord, I ain't never in my life seen a colored man talk to the police like that. They left here like scared dogs. Mabel was fierce in her own right. It will be interesting to read her perspective on their life together. We are inching close. Like I said, we're almost at the halfway point, so we will reset and see, what is her telling of all of this. And I even thought that's kind of cowardly, too. You are tough race soldiers. You all have bragged about raping black females like Mabel Williams. You've bragged about cornering isolated black females and making them dance at gunpoint. Jesse Helms Sr. dragging a black female down the street. You all have done all of that. All it takes is one little old Mabel Williams with a 12-gauge. That's really, yes, ma'am, Mrs. Williams. Wait a minute now. We don't want no trouble. What? You is a coward, in my opinion. You gonna be tough all the other time. You're supposed to be tough now, too. She got a gun, I got a gun. I'm a police officer. I'm trained. You're not even trained for no 12 gauge. You have to show me, and you have to show me that you got the courage to put down a white man, a white police officer, because I don't think you got that much coward, nigger woman. That's what you're supposed to sound like. You even in fact, you supposed to get smacked down because you got the audacity as a nigger woman to pull a 12 gauge on a white man, on a police officer, no less. And you too, Rob. Scurrying off like a cowardly behavior. Uncle Tom's who carry around. VGQ, how many times is Uncle Tom's used in the text? 4 times? No name calling Neely Fuller Jr. I have to count, but we've heard it a few times. I'm not sure. One of the few fires that occurred in the black community, so-called, claimed a night spot operated by a black teacher who had written letters to the white papers asking supporters throughout the United States to stop sending us guns and other contributions. She claimed that Monroe was a peaceful town where the races had gotten along beautifully until I started stirring up trouble. A few days after her letter was published, her juke joint burned down. Arson is not our thing. The risk is too great. It is a wrong tactic for us at this time. It may happen, but we will stick to self-defense as long as we can. Maybe the burning down of the juke joint was a false flag operation perpetrated by the Klan to sow dissension among non-white victims. I thought the same thing. If I even thought it could have been race soldiers who put that article in the paper to begin with, and this is just another illustration of racial showcasing. We're going to make it seem like, see, black people don't even support you, which is true, but still, black people don't even support this old no-count Robert F., see, and they know he is an upstart and a troublemaker and a militant and a radical, and we get along great. They say race relation, everything is fine. Everybody gets along. It's just that old no-count Rob is messing it up for everybody. White people could have put that in the paper, and then white people also go and we burn up the juke joint. Why do we care about some Negro juke joint? Why would racists care? Why would they be, oh no, we want the Negro juke joint. I'm sure the white people, they can do their slumming any other time. They got lots of access to go get Niggras if they want to sleep with them or whatever else they want to do. They got lots of access for that. They go burn up the juke, and that gets used as further justification. We're going to blame that on Rob too. Oh, yeah, he did it. And get some of the black people to think, Rob burned down the juke joint. You ought to be ashamed of yourself burning down a black teacher's juke joint. Incidentally, I did have to think about that a little bit. The black teacher owns the juke joint. I don't know if I want the black teacher to run the juke joint. Entrepreneurial spirit, I get it, but just, I don't know. At minimum, the juke joint, that seemed like late hours, isn't it? I normally think of the juke joint, that's like a midnight. 1 o'clock, the hours Jonathan Farrell got killed. That's what I think, like 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't think, the juke joint is going to be open at noon, competing for when you at school. I don't know if I want the teacher to be at the juke joint at 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock at night, and then they got to be in the classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, anyway, broadening the scope of struggle, 10-point program. During the summer, many blacks, including heads of families, were laid off so the local white high school and college students on vacation could take their jobs and extra spending money. Union County Industrial Development Commission was following the new trend in the South. It was using public tax money to facilitate concessions offered to attract northern industry, running from unionized and more costly labor in the North. Blacks were employed only in the lowest paying and most menial jobs in this industry. Racist white supremacists use a myriad of tactics to deprive victims of employment or underemploy them. Recently, right-to-work laws have been used in many states to undermine unionization of workers, resulting in declining pay and benefits due to lack of collective bargaining. North Carolina Budget and Tax Center, Senate Bill 1082, North Carolina Right-to-Work Amendment, ballot measure to enshrine so-called right-to-work laws in the state constitution. That's just this year. On August 15, 1961, hey, look at that. Our NAACP branch represented Dr. Albert E. Perry 10-point program to the Monroe Board of Aldermen. It read as follows. See 10-point program, 1966. Dr. Huey P. Newton, Black Panther Party. Did the Monroe 10-point program influence Mr. Newton? I'm pretty sure that it did. I think we might even get to some of that explicitly, but I'm pretty sure it did. And I think he might have even stated so directly. 3. Governor Terry Stanford had approached him. The aide was a black man known as Dr. Larkin. State did relax some of the restrictions that had been placed on Dr. Perry. They let him move home to Monroe to pull on my coattail. They partially restored his license to practice medicine. Governor Sanford enrolled his son and daughter in the first integrated public school in Raleigh, North Carolina. It had one black child in the school at the time. How a courageous Southern governor broke ranks with segregationists in 1961. Courageous? C.O.W.S. Book Club, Medical Apartheid. The Dark History of Experimentation on Black Americans from Colonial Times to the Present. Mentioned several times this week alone and mentioned frequently. Let's see. We didn't get to chapter 41. Pause, and we'll pick up there once we read a little bit more. Let's see. I'll dig in some of my notes, see if other folks, they have any thought as we continue. Going back to the beginning of chapter 37. Let's see. He said right from the top that he was branded a communist troublemaker and targeted for destruction. All that name calling, at least from what we have read thus far. I guess they could say him going to Cuba, but we heard from Mabel Williams that they had not, at this point, very early on, it's not like they had come out and said that we are super Cuba or communist, Reds, and all the rest of it, but they just do all that name calling, anything to say, oh no, this Negro here who is trying to replace white supremacy with justice, this Negro here is communist, Marxist, troublemaker, militant, radical, any sort of name calling. That even said communist Coon later on, any sort of name call. The champions of name calling, people classified as white. And even the basics, Rob has never said, yes, I am a communist. He has never said that. He said, I'm a black person, victim of racism. He never said, I'm a communist. They come in any old label that they can stick on you that, yes, this is someone who should be mistreated because they are a coon, Nigra, communist, all of the above. Nigger coon, yes. Let's see. He said he recognized the driver. As I already said, the Griffin family continues with their dealerships and such in Monroe. The pattern of enforcement officials looking, laughing at black people being killed, that is standard operating procedure throughout this time period. Part of what motivated much of the frustration with black people with regards to federal authorities, FBI, J. Edgar Hoover's lackeys, and other enforcement officials would just come and sit around and watch black people be terrorized, even killed, and or laugh, applaud, widespread. Let's see. After Robert F. and his victims are almost run off the road by the Klan, could have been killed easily. And even, I thought for this, we're talking like 60 years ago. So if you can, I know for a lot of it now, imagine, it's 2026. We are grousing about autonomous vehicles and how safely they drive. Do they contribute to accidents, and do they drive correctly having a vehicle with no driver behind the wheel? Airbags, all that even seems kind of passe. Airbags and seat belts and crumble bars on the side and all the rest of it, and shatterproof glass and all the rest of it. We're talking vehicle safety from 60 years ago. I suspect they might not have even had seat belts in the vehicle that Rob was driving, his British car, much less airbags, much less, windshield that won't shatter and cut you to death and all the rest of it. Like, man, what kind of vehicle safety did they have way back then? And you're going to be ran off the road. Anyway, even did they have AAA back then? Did they have AAA? Come get you out of the ditch? We continue, and after all that, they continue on the protest to the swimming pool. WTH. Like, are you serious? I cannot even. We could have been killed. They just made an attempt on our life, and it's not, let's go home and where's the Jack Daniels to calm my nerves, or let's go, get a sedative, Let's go watch the football preseason. I can't even think straight. We're gonna have to at least postpone this to the end. We continue on to the pool protest, where we could also be killed. Astounding demonstration of courage, in my opinion. Let's see. To get to 38, next attempt on his life. We hear it again, where he says, the young, violence-prone white man who had driven the Ford came toward my stricken Hillman wielding a baseball bat. Even that is kind of, yes, an armed white man, an unarmed white person yelling and screaming and ready to, punch you or whatever. But a baseball bat is like, wow. Wow. Just wow. His eyes were aflame with hatred, and it was more than obvious that he and his fellow bigots were planning to commit the dastardly ritual of violence and lynching that was typical of their forefathers, venting savage rage against helpless and defenseless black victims. That right there, all of this stops when they pull out their pistols. All of this stops when they pull out their pistols. They are, as he said, we are accustomed to terrorizing, killing, brutalizing, defenseless, helpless black people. That, again, lets me know, yes, you're racists and you're terrorists and all that. You all are cowards. You got a whole town out, dozens, mob of people, 3 armed black people, and that's all it takes. Ooh, his eyes then evened up a little bit. Wait a minute now. You all are cowards, man. You need a baseball bat and a whole army behind you, and now I'm tough. Now I got some courage. Bring that old no-count nigger woman out here, and we'll show her who's boss. What? Like I said now, this is not one that this is over and over. That's Dill and Reb, see? Really, that's Jonathan Ferrell. Cowards. I just needed some help. Oh, you trying to kill us? Oh, my God, you raping nigger. We got to shoot you 50 times. It's cowardly behavior. Cowardly behavior that we then use to justify we got to kill all these black people. White genetic annihilation in there as well. But that don't really, you are still a gang of racist cowards. Baseball bat, please. Let's see. All this talk about, I said the baseball bat, that would be kind of unnerving. All of this yelling, burn the Niggras. Throw gasoline on the Niggras. Again, I'm of the belief at this time period, oh yeah, they could have easily been burned up. Easily. You mouthing off, you got guns, you trying to mess over our pool, and what have you. Been accused of helping them raping little boys in the kissing case. Hey, drown these Niggras in gasoline and burn them. I'm surprised you trying to come to the pool. We gonna fill it up with gasoline, call that Nigger Day, and burn them all up. That would kind of get at me as well. Like, I don't want to be beaten on or spit on or arrested, but that is a little different being beaten to death with a baseball bat. That is a little different. We're going to throw gasoline on you and set you on fire. And then maybe beat you with a baseball bat too. Like, man, I don't need, can you train for that? Like to be beaten with a baseball bat? Come on, let's see. So they're going to take Rob's gun. He says no. They have all this back and forth. Robert, God damn it, if you hurt any of these white people, I'm going to kill you myself. Surrender your guns, surrender your guns. He repeated over and over as if he had become crazed with frustration. The crowd roared with more sanctioned, vicious outcries of kill them, kill the Niggras, pour gasoline on the Niggras, burn the Niggras. I thought it was important within all of that he said specifically, if you hurt any of these white people, making it explicit. It is white life that is valued. Like, we got to, ain't even that many people here. It's obvious, but we got to make it explicit. If you hurt any white person, you gonna die today, nigga. Make it explicit so we all know what we got it. We got it. White lives matter. Got it. Let's see. When they get the state troopers to come in, and they get this one old crotchety suspected race soldier, and then the one young race soldier, I thought that was so fascinating how all of that developed, because Rob said, how is this? I've never seen such an old and crotchety white person still working. Why isn't he retired? Why didn't they send in, some young, matter of fact, why didn't they send in a whole army of state troopers, young, virile, armed, ready to clear out all of these folks? But then watching how all of this unfolded, all it took was this one old white man to come and get an attitude, raise his voice. Damn it, I'm not playing. Think he might have put the GD on it, but still, damn it. I done told y'all, clear the road right now. He turned around to his young white officer, race soldier, and he pull out his nigger knocker and swing him, get out of here. And they backed up and moved away. Wow. That's all it took. And Rob and them then rode off to safety. 2 white people, and one of them a crotchety old white person who is probably racist too. Wow, that is what it means to be white, even under the worst circumstances. All it takes, white people to say, hey, get back. I told you to get back off the road. Get. And they move back. Voice of other. That is the man. Don't care how old, I done told you, get back. Let's see. They yelled and called them communist coons. I told you, the world champions, undisputed, really undefeated. We think we know something about name calling, talking about the dozens and your mama. Nobody does name calling better than racist man, racist woman, racist child. They do name calling and people die. Quick. Ain't just going to be some insults and what have you. It's going to be name calling for you to die. Name calling for you to lose a job. Maybe everybody in your family to lose a job. And we get the same old cat. That's why I said this massive theme, at least for Robert Williams' book. We'll have to see if this continues for Mabel Williams' section. But for Rob's memoir, he says, full of anger, after being unable to get their weight with us, the agitated racists resorted to the old Southern custom of attacking every available and defenseless black person within rage. I don't think this is a so-called Southern custom. I think this is a white custom worldwide. He continues, during the rest of the day, those unfortunate enough to drive past the crossroads had their cars stoned. One black man was rumored to have been pulled from his car, tied to a tree, and severely beaten. Again, this is coward behavior. You're tough. Why do you need to go and grab all the? That's the same as Columbine. I'm going to go get Isaiah Shoals in the library. I don't even know what's going on. What are y'all doing? What's going on here? I ain't been protesting. I was out working. Get over here, nigga. You communist coon. We're going to tie you to a tree. Again, it's cowardice. One black person. You got a whole mob. Y'all armed, baseball bats, ropes, pistols, all the rest of it. You got a group. One black person. I got a newspaper. And I was just trying to walk home from work. I don't even know what y'all doing. They love that sort of that coward behavior through and through. Act like we tough, we did something. We the toughest in the world. When it was you and Rob one-on-one, you want the toughest in the world then. It was, They got any of them nigger gals we can go get with my baseball bat? I don't want none with that Rob. He 220. I don't know. Come on, man. Let's see. Blacks suffered some nasty and unprovoked attacks. The ones who were attacked were primarily the defenseless. I'm sure if we had not displayed a will to fight, there would have been considerably more tragic incidents. On one evening, a member of our defense team, this is the Oda With one that we already talked about, where he fought back. And again, this is one black person fighting back, and they still run like cowards. Let's see. We were never in much favor with members of the Communist Party, though the philosophy of Reverend Martin Luther King, they thought the philosophy of Reverend Martin Luther King to be the only acceptable way to struggle against U.S. racism. Their theoreticians argued that my method would drive a wedge between white and black workers. WTF. I had so many questions, my brain almost fell out of my head. Like, who are these Communist Party members? Can we get like exact names? Are these white people? Are these black people? Name everybody who said, hey, Rob, all this foolishness that you doing, trying to get Niggras in the pool and all that in Monroe and battling the Klan and such and being run off the road, all this old foolishness, you are messing up the good brotherhood between white and black workers. Like, put down the mad dog right now. I don't think this is you, Uncle Tom Heathen. What are you just? Put down the mad dog right now. Have you been at the juke joint? You've been at the juke joint, ain't you? Put down that mad dog. We're going to talk to you after you sobered up and see if you're going to talk some sense. What black person anywhere in the known universe, you could have fallen from a spaceship, Sputnik, whatever. What black person, foundational or no, is, hey, let's not disrupt the union between black and white workers. What? Even if you said that now. What? They expressed the belief that blacks should struggle side by side with white workers for socialism. What? I can't even get to, what do you mean socialism? Struggle side, what? What? Put that cup down. Put that cup down. Now, we're going to have this conversation again in the morning. Don't you go to the juke joint at all. We're going to talk about this again tomorrow and see if you make any sense. Now, I don't know if Dr. Welsing would have sounded like this back in the days when she said she was a Marxist-Leninist. I don't know. Did Angela Davis, was she one of the people that sounded like this when she said she was a Marxist-Leninist? If so, it would have been the same thing. Francis, put that cup down. And we're going to talk to you and see if you got some sense in the morning. Angela, put that cup down. Don't you go to the juke. We're going to talk to you in the morning and see if you sound sensible. If not, we're not going to call you a coon or an Uncle Tom, although I might be thinking it, but we ain't going to talk no more. White brothers. I guess people, Dr. King even said, our sick white brothers. I guess it was a lot of that talk during it. Whew. Confusion is lethal. The police were making note of who supported our publication, just as employers were watching workers to see who was sleeping on the job and thus possibly could be identified as members of our security guard. If they are that vigilant, meaning racists who employ by the good graces that a black person has a job, man, I bet they fired all kinds of black person. All you got to do is be on the job. Leroy, you fired. You out of here. what I do? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You've been up on, That's one right there. That's all it takes is we think you sleep. Don't let you come in late. Don't let you say you done overslept or nothing like that. Yawn if you want to. Come on. He did say, and we heard that multiple times, we are employed by the good graces of racists. Let's see. Many people said basically the same when Rob ran from the police in his vehicle and got to his house and they put out their guns and you're not taking us to jail for having broken. Don't they still use that one, nigga? You got a broken tail light, nigga. We got to arrest you. And then they can do the Rodney King on you and all the rest of it. What you got in the car? You got some baggies in there? You got some crack cocaine? When he did that, bunches of people responded the same way his neighbors did. That I ain't never seen no black dude talk to a white man like that. We have heard tons of people say that about Rob. Like, well, even Mabel said that, like, man, I was a accommodationist. She said it directly. I was a accommodationist. You know, you just try and go along to get along and don't upset these white people. I don't want no trouble. And Rob, he didn't talk like that at all. I ain't never seen nothing like that. Like, tons of black. And it was kind of scary. Like, Rob gonna get us in trouble with these white people? Good Lord. Woo. And you still hear that. I've heard that with other people. Minister Malcolm X. I've heard people, Sonia Sanchez, she said he would come on TV and her parents would come and say, Lord Jesus, turn that off. These are her black parents. Turn that off. Jesus Christ. Get us in trouble with these white people. What's wrong with you? So, and that is the result of terrorism when you have these old cowardly, racist white people and they come out and terrorize people for generations. Wilmington, North Carolina, that is the result. Shh. We don't want to talk about no racism. Hey, don't you alienate our sick white brothers, Rob. Communists. We'll get to audio segment 2. If you have audio that you did not get to share, jot it down, and we will catch it on the second audio segment. This is the Memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams, Context of White Supremacy, Katherine Massey Book Club, audio segment 2.
Chapter 41. Nonviolent tactics are acceptable so long as they don't require sacrificing our human dignity. To all of those who were conscious of racial conflict and struggle across the land, Monroe had become synonymous with militant self-defense. Monroe represented the option to turn the other cheekism. A debate was sweeping across the country, both pro and con, relative to the tactical value of armed self-defense. The lines soon became so obsessed that it was no longer a matter that I had merely advocated self-defense. Many frightened individuals and just plain pacifists were telephoning, telegraphing, and writing me to give up armed self-defense. Jackie Robinson, the first black to break into Major League Baseball, wrote a special letter appealing to me to relinquish my right to self-defense. Early in the summer of 1961, I received a phone call from Slim Brudage of the College of Complexes, a combination coffee house and militant open forum in Chicago, Illinois. A pacifist, Brundage had been active in raising contributions of clothing and money for Monroe's CARE, Crusaders Association for Relief and Enlightenment organization. I've been reading in the papers about all the trouble you've been having, he said. Has it ever occurred to you that you might be using the wrong philosophy? No, I answered. Perhaps you have missed experiencing the power of nonviolence and love, Slim stated. I doubt it, I replied. Well, would you be willing to try a different approach? Would you be willing to let some people who believe in nonviolence come down there to help you and prove that nonviolence and love really work? I had never seen or heard anything of Slim Brundage other than through the contributions he had been making on a regular basis to CARE. I had always exerted special effort to convince all who questioned our stance that not only were we not willing instigators of violence, but we believed in passive resistance where it was feasible and possible. My reply to Brundage was, "We are not trying to promote any special type of philosophy. We are willing to use whatever works without a sacrifice of our human dignity." I explained that nonviolence and love can be powerful weapons when one engages a civilized foe, but when challenging an uncivilized brute, attempting to overcome him with love is an invitation to suffer the loss of life and limb. We were not mentally equipped to withstand brutish violence. I assured him that if anyone could subdue those bigoted savages with love, I would be more than willing to become a pacifist. I accepted Mr. Brundage's offer of nonviolent active support. Within the next few days, I received telephone calls from Paul Brooks, a young minister and aide of Reverend Martin Luther King, and James Foreman, who at the time was one of the leading organizers of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were volunteering to come to Monroe and promised to solicit freedom riders, just recently released from prison in Alabama, to come also. The sit-in movement was taking North Carolina by storm. I led our local group to what came to be known as the 13th town to stage publicized sit-ins. We had grown up in Jim Crow town and had always experienced the hurt and shame of being denied the most basic of human rights, the right to seek service as a human being at an ordinary merchandise trade counter. Our first targets were the drugstores. Most of them had lunch counters, but even to get prescriptions filled, black patrons had to remain standing in the rear of the building. Many black men, acting in compliance with abject submission to white supremacy, waited with hat in hand to pay for their prescriptions being filled at the Jim Crow pharmacies. In the beginning of July, in 1961, we again seized the initiative. It was a balmy day. A low overhang of clouds obscured the sun when we arrived on Main Street. We had already been sitting in and demonstrating at all of the town's drugstores with the exception of one. We had deliberately excluded Wilson's drugstore because a secretly sympathetic Afro-American worked there, and he was the source of overheard conversations among the whites. Also, we chose not to alienate all of the sources of medicine in case we experienced a need to have a prescription filled. William Crawford was the Afro-American who worked there, and we hoped that he would be watchful of any untoward action that might occur to our detriment. This day, we were retracing our steps to the segregated Jones's drugstore lunch counter. When we entered the building and made our way to the lunch section, the workers did as they usually did when we appeared. They closed it. We were informed that Negroes were not served there, and we were asked to leave. We refused. The owner then asked everyone to leave and announced that the entire establishment was being closed to business. He stood at the door, urging all patrons to leave. Along with the whites, we filed out. A mob of whites and some observing blacks had gathered and started milling in front of the building. The inflamed bigots became highly vocal and started to make open threats of violence. One of the racist whites pointed a menacing finger at me and announced, "That nigger is going to get killed. You can bet on that." A black man who had been silently watching and leaning against a parking meter became animated by the words of the bigot. His face bore many scars, indicating that he had been in some violent and perhaps life-threatening fights. Confronting the agitator, he declared, "You cracker motherfucker, you'd better hush before your goddamn mouth gets your ass all fucked up. You keep talking like that, and you won't live long enough to see him dead. I just got back from Central Prison for killing the son of a bitch, and I'll go back again for killing your ass." His words and his appearance stunned the raging racist, and he backed away in total silence. It was a feeling of great elation to know that a proven killer was ready to take up our fight. Other black bystanders gave approval to his stand. The incident added a completely new element to our determined assault on the oppressive status quo. It served notice to the segregationists that our action was solidifying all strata of the black community. As we were preparing to leave the downtown area, Chief Mauney and members of the local police surrounded our group. I was placed under arrest for trespassing. Out of the group, I was the only one arrested. I was taken before a judge who was sitting at the nearby courthouse. Two of Monroe's elder, prominent black citizens, Reverend Baxter Perry and Mr. George Rushing, after being notified by the woman in the phone calling circle, rushed to the courthouse to bail me out. The judge asked what they were doing there. In times past, such a question from a white judge would have sent black men of that caliber into a nervous state of denial. Things had changed. They stood firm and unyielding. Reverend Perry told the judge, "We have come to go on Williams's bond." The judge retorted caustically, "Baxter, you and George don't want to go on this boy's bond." Mr. Rushing replied, "Oh, yes, we do. That's exactly what we are here for, Judge." "Well, he'll have to go to jail until we can finish drawing up the papers." Reverend Perry and Mr. Rushing indicated that they would stay right there until I was released. The sheriff ordered me into a lineup of 8 felons. He deliberately paired me with a young black woman who had just been convicted for murdering her father for sexual molestation. A group of deputies armed with shotguns marched us 2 blocks along city streets to the old, dilapidated, segregated jail. I was in custody for about an hour and a half until they allowed the black citizens to post my bond. The incarceration was a thing of mean spite rather than a case of legality. I submitted to the arrest because the charge was only a misdemeanor, and the whole idea of the sit-in movement was to bring about constitutional test cases to strike down segregation in public places. I was tried and convicted and sentenced to a $50 fine and 30 days on what was known as the prison chain gang. The national office of the NAACP consolidated my case with 6 others it had earmarked for the U.S. Supreme Court. The NAACP assured me that the legal aspect of my case would be taken care of with the group. About 10 days before our cases were to go up on appeal, I received a call from the Greensboro Bureau of United Press International asking whether I had decided to serve my sentence rather than go up on appeal. When I informed the UPI reporter that I had not dropped the appeal of my sentence, I was told that the Bureau had checked the court records and there was no appeal registered for me. It was unbelievable that the national office would be so treacherous as to set me up for a chain gang sentence. Evidently, the NAACP had gone to such lengths to portray me as a violent wild man rather than an American exercising his constitutional rights of self-defense that it could not stomach the idea of my being entered in the historical record as one who had also utilized nonviolent methods. Disgusted and angry at the national office for trying to deliver me up to Southern tyrannical racism, I immediately called attorney Conrad Lynn in New York. A shocked Lynn assured me that he was at that very moment going to make some calls soliciting emergency aid and would get back to me soon. He said that we could not afford to lose any time or else I would be a goner. The following day, Conrad called me with the good news that the Emergency Civil Liberties Union, a group I had never heard of, had agreed to take over my appeal. He told me that one of the top constitutional lawyers in the country, Leonard Bowden, was going to handle it and that I had nothing to worry about. Eventually, the case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was one of the 7 where the court decided that segregation in public places was outlawed. Chapter 42, Spotlighted Again, The Ordeal of Nonviolent Freedom Riders in Monroe. Drawn to the uniqueness of Monroe, individuals started to trek in and out. They wanted to see this cauldron wherein blacks had raised a flag of militancy that had not been seen in modern times. Among the early visitors were Julian Mayfield, Dr. Reginald Wilson, May Mallory, Constant Lever, Ronald Frazier, Yuriko Nakajima, and many others. Blacks were fighting back, and persons from diverse locations wanted to see and experience this glorious spectacle with their own eyes. Blacks had been beaten down for so long, had turned the other cheek, sometimes cringing in the face of racist brutality and abdicating the responsibility of defending their homes, women, and children, that even just-minded whites gloried in our spunk. The world media was full of traumatic scenes of defenseless blacks being set upon by vicious police dogs, water hoses, cattle prods, and policemen's billy clubs, and sometimes being lynched in situations seemingly tantamount to meek lambs being led to slaughter. On at least one occasion, the media had reported Reverend Martin Luther King praying prior to a demonstration that if any must fall that day, to let it be us. I could not see any need to appeal to God to let us fall. That had been happening since we were first taken into captivity. My secret prayer was that God would give us the strength and firepower to triumph over our oppressors if they should dare attack. Upon hearing the report of Dr. King's petition, recollections of my Uncle Charlie's argument with my mother readily filled my thoughts. When word got out that we were willing to accept pacifists, freedom riders all over the country began discussing coming to Monroe. But Martin Luther King's associates obviously didn't seem interested in having Monroe become a focal point in the desegregation struggle. They let it be known that no funds would be made available for those who wanted to work with me. Despite this, a group of freedom riders, whites as well as blacks, just getting out of jail in Alabama, announced that they were coming to Monroe before returning to their homes in the North. Consequently, Reverend King then decided to send the Reverend Paul Brooks, his personal representative, along with instructions to work under Williams's direction. I was informed that King himself was to come down the following week to lend his weight to a peaceful resolution to the highly explosive situation. When word spread through North Monroe that freedom riders were coming, many black people volunteered their homes for housing them. Many women in the neighborhood volunteered food and cooking. The entire community was aroused. Never before had the town witnessed whites living in the homes with blacks. As much and as long as Afro-Americans had suffered at the hands of violently oppressive whites, they opened up their hearts and homes to the brave young whites who had come to lay their lives on the line in a cause to dignify a flawed and compromised American way of life. I asked our local young freedom fighters to support the pacifists. At first, some intimated that turn the other cheekism was against their nature. I finally convinced them that we had to give the freedom riders a chance. They acceded after my explanation that this would be the first time in the history of civil rights movement that the philosophies of nonviolence and armed self-defense would be compared at work in the same environment. Personally, I was not convinced that violent racism could be changed by pacifism. I explained to the group that a lot of people from all over the world would be watching to see what happened here. It could not do us any harm, and just possibly it could do some good. The stage was now set. When the pacifists arrived, there were 17 of them, led by James Foreman. They joined with the local youths to establish the Monroe Nonviolent Action Committee. Everyone involved in the desegregation struggle was asked to take an oath, swearing to adhere to pacifist principles, thus rejecting the use of any form of self-defense while taking part in demonstrations. I personally refused to make such a pledge, but urged the members of our NAACP branch, our Rifle Club members, and citizens at large to give staunch support to those who had chosen to pursue that method. Members of the Monroe Nonviolent Action Committee agreed to form a picket line around the Union County Courthouse in support of our 10-point program. This action was supposed to carry our previous efforts to fruition. On Monday, August 21st, 1961, the demonstration began. The first day was so uneventful that it convinced some of the Freedom Riders that everything I had told them about the racists in Monroe had been greatly blown out of proportion. One northern white college student returning from the picket line the first day elatedly told me, "A policeman smiled at me while I was on the picket line." He was probably smiling at the thought of how he was going to have an opportunity to put a hurting on your ass, I told him. He gave me a look of disbelief. Constance Lever, the British exchange student who was a guest observer in our home, after hearing the exchange, retorted, "Oh, I don't think these people are so bad, Rob. Evidently, you don't know how to approach them." All of my efforts to explain to the outsiders that the local bigots were only acting friendly in an effort to win over the strangers were to no avail. Southern hospitality was overriding their logic and blinding them to the tradition and history of Southern white racist culture. I informed them that the moment they realize that they can't get you to stop picketing by being polite, you're going to find out for yourselves. Without consulting me, the Freedom Riders issued a press release declaring that they were in Monroe to try to bring about better race relations through strictly nonviolent means. I told them that putting something like that in the newspapers, there was a big mistake. They had served notice on the violence-prone white reactionaries that they could attack them with impunity. I told them, for almost 5 years now, the racists have been afraid to attack us because they know we are armed and that we are willing to meet violence with violence. Our fight-back stance has frustrated the hell out of them. No doubt, they would like to recoup the face they lost and would like to retake the initiative. By making this kind of public announcement, you are in effect challenging them to do something. On the very same day that the Monroe Inquirer carried the press release, I received a telephone call from a bigot who claimed to represent the Ku Klux Klan. "Robert, I am calling for the Klan. We want to know if you have become one of these Martin Luther Coon pacifists." "No," I answered. "Well then, are you and your nigger goons participating with those damn Yankee pacifists?" When I gave him another no, he went on, "That's just fine. We're sure glad to know you won't be around because we plan a hot reception for them college agitators." On Wednesday, the third day of demonstrations, the racist townspeople, as predicted, turned. They dropped their Southern hospitality facade and reverted to their traditional meanness. Hecklers came out in strength and started taunting the protesters. When one Freedom Rider reacted with a smile, 2 women spat in his face. A policeman knocked another picket to the ground and threatened to break his camera. A third picket was arrested for protesting the lawman's actions. Tension was mounting. On Thursday, the 4th day, 3 white men attacked one of the white freedom riders. He didn't fight back. His nonviolence emboldened the vicious element of white supremacists. Inasmuch as the cops broke up the attack and promised to arrest the assailants, even the man who had been attacked remained convinced that the law was on the side of the demonstrators. Despite the fact that my youngest son, John Williams, was only 11 years old, he insisted on joining the picket line. I refused, despite the fact that he charged he was being discriminated against. He said that we were fighting discrimination while discriminating against him because he was little. Since the swimming pool incident, my children had only been allowed briefly to picket during the lunch counter actions. I had kept my family in the background as much as possible for their own protection. During interviews, I never revealed that I had a family. Only a few people knew their identity. Somehow, erroneously, the word got out that my sons were marching with the pacifists. Consequently, a group of white men severely beat 10-year-old Prentice Robinson on the main street of town. It was a serious case of mistaken identity. Despite several witnesses to the assault, which left the child seriously injured, the police took no action. On that very same day, one of the white freedom riders was shot in the stomach by a high-powered air rifle. It occurred directly in front of the courthouse, in full view of the cops, but no arrests were made then either. That was also the day when the sanitation department had the picket line sprayed with insecticide. It was also the day that a hurried special ordinance was introduced requiring pickets to remain at least 15 feet apart. Relative to this ordinance, the cops formulated a special tactic. They would stop a freedom rider, engage him or her in conversation, and arrest the one who approached from the rear for violation of the too close ordinance. On the morning of the 5th day, I was paid a very strange visit from an old man, Mr. Chambers, for whom I had pressured the local and reluctant white welfare agency to grant medical attention, which consisted of an operation on a tumor on his neck that was choking him to death. On one occasion, while working on his behalf, I had taken a Japanese exchange student with me to his home to visit his family. Yuriko Nakajima was a house guest and a University of Michigan graduate student. She had been shocked at the condition of poverty in which they lived and remarked, "In Asia, we have very dire poverty, but everyone knows it, and we are doing our best to get rid of it. Here in the United States, I never imagined to see people living so badly. You Americans hide your poor from the rest of the world." She had snapped pictures to prove to her friends and colleagues in Japan that she was not anti-American and exaggerating conditions seldom seen by foreigners. Mrs. Pauline Carlock, one of our very staunch NAACP CARE activists who lived in Marshville, related to me how the ailing Mr. Chambers had walked a great distance to her house at the break of day and pleaded with her to bring him to my house. She asked me to please humor the old man by pretending to take him seriously. She had not wanted to come because she knew how busy I was, but Mr. Chambers would not take no for an answer. The old man was sitting in the car in front of my house when I approached him. He looked up at me with a serious expression and announced authoritatively, "I brought you a charm." Puzzled, I asked, "What kind of charm?" He fumbled with what appeared to be some type of greeting card on which he had scribbled what was obviously a religious incantation. As I visually scanned the decorative candle on the card, he handed it to me and admonished me to keep it on my person at all times. He proceeded to tell me that he had had a vision during the previous night, and in that vision he had seen thousands of white enemies coming to destroy me. He said that they would come within 3 days, and that was why he had insisted that Pauline bring him to warn me. He said that God had revealed the whole thing to him. He stressed with great emphasis, "So long as you keep this on your body, they will not be able to take or harm you. Write your name on it," he insisted. Pauline, who was standing nearby, winked and smiled at me. "Go on and take it, Rob. He is sincere and is very much worried about you. He knows how much these people would like to get rid of you." I accepted the charm, hurriedly scribbled my name where he indicated, thanked Mr. Chambers and Pauline, and said goodbye. As I entered the house, Mabel wanted to know what the old man wanted with me that was so important to him that he just had to come at such a hectic time. Tossing the paper on the table, I explained to her what Mr. Chambers' visit was all about. She read the inscription and insisted that I fold it up and put it in my wallet. When I refused, she asked for my wallet. Carefully folding the paper, she placed it in my wallet and said, "It can't do you any harm to keep it. In fact, you need all the luck and blessing that you can get." After Pauline and Mr. Chambers left, and Mabel's desperation in grasping at straws, I became curious to know the content of the message scrawled on the supposed charm. I took it out of my wallet, unfolded it, and read, "Heavenly and holy prophet, blow every blow and misfortune away from me. I seek refuge under the tree of life, which bears 12-fold fruits. I stand behind the holy altar of the Christian Church. I commend myself to the Holy Trinity. I, Robert F. Williams, hide myself beneath the holy corpse of Jesus Christ. I commend myself unto the ruins of Jesus Christ, that the hand of no man might be able to seize me or beat me or imprison me or overcome me. By God that carries all power, I beseech him to keep and be with me, to keep me in a safe place, safe from all of my enemies, visible or invisible." I smiled, refolded it, and stuck it back in my wallet.
Context of white supremacy. We will pick up there next, next Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, as we continue the memoirs of Robert Mabel Williams. Has been quite a bit to learn. I have loved it so far, and even more to go. So hopefully folks are learning a lot. The number to dial, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. See if I can do a quick share if I don't get too discombobulated. There we go. Okay. Reading nonfiction is more important than watching television. They mentioned James Foreman and even the connection. Thank gosh you don't have some lazy crackhead bum facilitating the Katherine Massey book club. They mentioned James Foreman and his connection to Monroe and coming with Dr. King and more attention, all that. And even in the footnotes, it's mentioned that James Foreman wrote about his experience with Robert Williams in Monroe, North Carolina, in the book, The Making of Black Revolutionaries. Gus T. read that. That is a phenomenal book. Very important. We have not read that on the Katherine Massey Book Club, but you should read it. His James Foreman's son, James Foreman Jr., he wrote a book about basically mass incarceration. He was one of the critics of Michelle Alexander in saying that she omits black on black violence as a major component of crime, and even why black people have supported a lot of the aggressive crime measures over the years because they are victims. We are victims of violent crime. But then also he pointed out the error in her numbers, saying that it's actually 52% of offenders, people who are incarcerated or in prison because of violent offenses, not 32%, which is what she said in her original publication of the new Jim Crow. But I thought that was an important connection to all of this as well. Anyway, as I said, it's mentioned in the footnotes that James Foreman Sr. writes about his Monroe experience in the making of Black revolutionaries. He does. This is on page 211. He writes, apparently the judge and the rest of the power structure wanted us out of town, for we were offered suspended sentences and a fine of $25 if we would agree not to picket or to violate the laws of Union County or the state of North Carolina for a period of 2 years. The judge gave us 30 minutes to choose between up to 2 years in jail or suspended sentences and leaving Monroe, for there would be no point in staying if the least activity on our part would land us in jail. Something weird happened at this point. We all knew that we were not guilty and we wanted to appeal. But Holt said that to appeal would cost money and we had no organization behind us. This left us at the mercy of Bill Kunstler, the white lawyer for the SCLC. He claimed there was no constitutional issue raised in the case. I thought this absurd. The right to picket, for one, has been guaranteed to all citizens. I could not understand why he didn't see this and even suspected him of being part of some SCLC deal to get us out of town. Bill has said in later years that he was more of a lawyer at that time than a movement person, and he learned a lot from Monroe. We had only 30 minutes, not enough time to explore alternatives. I was furious as we went back into the court and told the judge we accepted the suspended sentences. The courtroom emptied out. I stood at the back thinking about my involvement in Monroe, knowing that I had to leave, aware that even some black people were saying that the problem was Robert Williams instead of racism, feeling distraught, uncertain of the future, frustrated, mad with Kunstler, white lawyer, proud of Holt. Then Captain Elliott walked up to me. "You'd make a good lawyer, Foreman," he said, referring to the way I had passed notes to the lawyers to trip up the prosecution. "You know how to handle yourself in the courtroom." He paused. "I'm sorry about the verdict." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe this man was serious. We were all alone in the courtroom, just the two of us, a police captain of Monroe and a black man who respected Rob Williams. It is because we were alone, I thought, he wouldn't dare say those things otherwise. Yet I didn't rob him of his sincerity. I believed he meant what he said. He had tried to treat us with some respect as prisoners, and his actions before that had been decent. He knew we were innocent. All the pigs in Monroe knew that, but the one I saw now was a trapped man, trapped by racism in Monroe. I wondered how many other whites in Monroe, in all America, were also trapped as he was, afraid to challenge racism, afraid because they feared for their lives, their jobs, their security. Elliot would not keep his job long, I thought. "It's one of those things," I replied. "Don't worry about it. We'll make it." He left. I stood there alone. I was cool. I looked at the judge's seat. I grew cold. My mind froze. I loved humanity. I hated injustice. I will stop there. He goes on to give more. This is right at almost basically the close of chapter 28, which kind of sums up their Monroe experience. But you can again go read The Making of Black Revolutionaries to hear more of what James Foreman Sr., what his experience was in North Carolina. And you already heard, he said, hey, I had a lot of regard for Robert F. Williams, but man, you had even black people around here saying, the problem is that old troublemaking communist Robert F. If he would just shut up, things with race relations would be fine. Good graces of these white people would be restored. Woof. Victims guaranteed qualified. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564943. Pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The email untiljustice@gmail.com. Let's see. Our caller 5962. Do you have any thoughts on the second portion of the reading?
Yes, sir. May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one thing I didn't think of from the first reading was Dr. Perry in his imprisonment. I think I've heard from time to time where black people get imprisoned and they take you further and further out away from your family to imprison you, and then as you are released on parole, they sanction you to another place away from your family and loved ones. So I found that interesting, as well as obviously he wasn't able to practice medicine where he would normally practice it. From this reading, the things that stood out to me was just Robert Williams seeming in his own mind to be able to put together that we are in a great state of confusion as black people, where all it took was some good, just white people to come along with the Freedom Riders and peacefully protest. And if the police give us a little bit of a smile or a head nod of some sort, then things are going to be all right, and these relations will get back together like they're supposed to, but in their mind anyways. But Robert Williams seems to understand that they're only going to tolerate you, the racists are only going to tolerate you for so long, and even these peaceful protests aren't going to change the mind of white supremacists. And it just showed pretty much through the whole reading that the turn the other cheekism just wasn't going to work any more or any less than the armed resistance, but at least the armed resistance, you could take some racists with you. And that's all I have.
That was what I had said. Hey, much obliged, sir. Counter violence, even Mr. Fuller's maximum emergency compensatory act. You are supposed to self-terminate, but you take some race soldiers with you on the way out. Much obliged, sir. Let me see. Finish email number 1, and then make sure I didn't miss any other emails as we continue. Let's see, chapter 41. Jackie Robinson, the first black to break into Major League Baseball. That is not true. It's Fleetwood. I have to give his whole name. I'll do so before we go off the air. But Jackie Robinson was allowed to play baseball, and he was the first black person to play in the major leagues for a number of years, but he was not the first black person to play in Major League Baseball. We have discussed the use of Mr. Robinson as a foil against, you wrote a special letter appealing to Mr. Williams to relinquish his right to self-defense. We've discussed the use of Mr. Robinson as a foil against black males in the book club. See Paul Robeson, The Artist as Revolutionary by Gerald Horne. Malcolm X spoke about this. He apparently regretted his stance later in life. Did all the trauma he received in life contribute to his premature death? Probably. His wife is still alive. She was born in 1922. Wow. Bravo for her. 2. The summer of 1961, I received a phone call from Slim Brundage of the College of Complexes. Perhaps you have missed experiencing the power of nonviolence and love. Slim stated, nonviolence and love can be powerful weapons when one engages a civilized foe, but when challenging an uncivilized brute, attempting to overcome him with love is an invitation to suffer the loss of life and limb. I assured him that if anyone could subdue those bigoted savages with love. Myron Reed Slim Brundage, suspected racist, died in 1990. Founder and janitor of the College of Complexes, a radical social center in Chicago during the 1950s. It was a social club for beatniks, social movement during the 1950s and early 1960s, advocating anti-consumerism, drug experimentation, sexual exploration, self-expression through art, music, poetry, and painting, perhaps a forerunner of hippies. It sounded like Jim Jones almost. It functioned as a place for adult education and advocated free speech. The name is derived from a psychiatric term for repressed ideas that compel expression. Because of his anti-Cold War stance, he and the center were continually investigated by the Chicago Police Department's Red Squad. 3. First targets were the drugstores. To get prescriptions, black patrons had to remain standing in the rear of the building. See C.O.W.S Book Club, Medical Apartheid. One more time. We even have specific programs where we're talking about the absence of drugstores and the impact on black people, all their closings. CVS after Freddie Gray. 4. One of the racist whites pointed a menacing finger at me and announced, that nigger is going to get killed. You can bet on that. That nigger is going to get killed. A black man who had been silently watching, his face bore many scars, confronting the agitator. Cracker motherfucker, you better hush before your goddamn mouth gets your ass all fucked up. Well, are white people cowards? All I can say is you have a lot of illustrations in this book. It's not one white person. It's a whole gang of them. And all it takes is one, sometimes a black person who, hey, let's get down then, cracker. And we've seen that over and over. You don't even have to have equal forces. Just one black person. Well, let's get down. We can all die today. Let's get down. Uh-oh. Got a crazy nigger here. Uh-oh. Like, come on. Come on. Oh, then again, Reb and Dill. So if Isaiah Shoals, if he had been armed and they start firing off and got their grenades and such pipe bombs in the cafeteria, if Isaiah Shoals up in Colorado, if he had been packing heat, say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Y'all not, I'm clipped up too. Let's get down. They would have ran out of the school, because that's what it sounds like. That nigger boy got a gun too. We didn't put that in the plan. Let's abort. Cowards. Let's see. 4. One of the racist white. Oh, we got that one. 5. It was unbelievable that the national office would be so treacherous as to set me up for a chain gang sentence. Evidently, the NAACP had gone to such lengths to portray me as a violent, wild man rather than an American. We don't have no Americans now. Exercising his constitutional rights of self-defense. Emergency Civil Liberties Union, a group I had never heard of, me either, had agreed to take over my appeal. He told me that one of the top constitutional lawyers in the country, Leonard Bowden, was going to handle it. Black brothers. Leonard Bowden died in 1989, was a suspected racist attorney who represented many prominent activists during the 1960s, including Daniel Ellsberg, Julian Bond, hey, Cal Bell. Gusty took a class from him. His daughter was Kathy Bodine, who was a member of the Weather Underground. We talked about them a bunch. His grandson is Chessa Bodine, son of Kathy, and was district attorney for San Francisco 2020 to 2022. Go figure. A felonious murdering mother did not seem to affect his career trajectory. Why would that be? What does it mean to be white? See C.O.W.S Book Club tonight. We bombed the U.S. Capitol. William Rosenau. I was also thinking, our white guest, where we talked about all of these white attorneys who hopped in all these cases, and how that too is an aspect of white supremacy racism. Even William Kunstler, because he's one of those famous white lawyers, I think he worked on Mumia Abu Jamal's case. Lots of, and these would be, not all white peoples is racist. Chapter 42. Drawn to the uniqueness of Monroe, individuals started to trek in and out. They wanted to see this cauldron wherein blacks had raised a flag of militancy that had not been seen in modern times. Among the early visitors were Julian Mayfield, Dr. Reginald Wilson, May Mallory, Constance Lever, British exchange student Ronald Frazier, Yuriko Nakajima. Donald Reginald Wilson died in 2020, psychologist, activist, director of the Office of Minority Concerns, and senior scholar emeritus, Americans Council on Education. Tuskegee Airmen, World War II flying combat missions, earned degrees including PhD psychology on G.I. Bill, founder of the first African American ski club. For more details on him, see New Politics, Reginald Wilson, a Black American Socialist, by Dan Labatz. Recent text on Julian Mayfield, Something to Do with Power, Julian Mayfield's Journey Toward a Black Radical Thought, by David Tyroller Romine, released in 2025. He is a lesser-known activist, but was additionally an actor, director, writer, intellectual contributor to Black activist thought. Due to his writing, May Mallory died in 2007, activist and civil rights advocate for school desegregation and Black armed self-defense. 1956 founded the Harlem Nine, a group of mothers who protested against inadequate school conditions for non-white children in New York City. She was convinced by Julian Mayfield to drive to Monroe to assist the Williamses. She was arrested and jailed in 2021 for kidnapping due to her activities in Monroe. She was eventually released. 1965, she wrote a memo from a Monroe jail inspired by MLK, letter from a Birmingham jail. Yuriko Nakajima was a close friend of the Williamses. After the Williams' exile from Monroe, North Carolina, she wrote a treatise titled Black Political Participation as America Enters Its Third Century, 1989, written in Japanese. See Yuriko Nakajima and Robert Williams, Reasoning with the Long Civil Rights Thesis, 2019, Yuichiro Onishi. This is just a very brief note regarding these individuals. There is much more online, especially regarding this exchange student. I'd never heard of her before, Yuriko Nakajima. Apparently she wrote quite a bit, and this had a massive impact on her coming from Japan. This would be her coming from Japan, like post World War II. And apparently she was at the University of Michigan. Even that, to be, Michigan and North Carolina are not close. So to get all the way to Michigan and then trek down to Monroe for all of this activity and to see all of this directly, and to probably experience like Monroe, North Carolina racism directly during this period, like, wow, I suspect that would have a massive, she is non-white, so no telling how they'd be responding to her coming down here to getting all their business about how we mistreat our niggers. What you got to say about it? Chink, what you got to say about it? So I'm sure she probably had some interesting insight about all of this. And then apparently they stayed in contact. I'd be curious to read what she had to say. And apparently this had such an impact on her that she continued to talk about racism for the rest of her life, even when she went back to Japan. So that might be something to check on. Let's see, did we get that far? The pacifists arrived. This is number 2. There were 17 of them. They led by James Foreman. They joined with local youth to establish the Monroe Nonviolent Action Committee. Northern white college student returning from the picket line the first day elatedly told me a policeman smiled at me while I was on the picket line. Without consulting me, the Freedom Riders issued a press release declaring that they were in Monroe to try to bring about better race relations. Though strictly nonviolent means. I told them that putting something like that in the newspaper was a big mistake. This certainly puts a different spin on the white freedom riders who over the years have gotten a lot of accolades. Such arrogance. What does it mean to be white? And that sort of attitude that you don't know, you're just a dumb old Nigra. I live here. I was born here. These are the same whites that my parents told me risk your life dodging the train as opposed to walking by their house to get home from school. I know these people. I know what I'm talking about. What Fuller say? Hey, Whitey can show you better than I can tell you. During interviews, I never revealed that I had a family. Only a few people knew their identity. Somehow, erroneously, word got out that my sons were marching with the pacifists. Consequently, a group of white men severely beat a 10-year-old. I'm going to humbly... a group of white men, a la Corey Stingley in Wisconsin? You got to go hop on a little boy, a 10-year-old, and then take a group of you? Cowards. Total cowards. 4. Chambers. I had pressured the local and reluctant white welfare agency to grant medical attention. Consisted of an operation on a tumor on his neck that was choking him to death. Area Day, Washington, medical apartheid. Chambers had walked a great distance to her house at the break of day. I brought you a charm. Puzzled, I asked, what kind of charm? Greeting card? Religious incantation? Vision during the previous night. He had seen thousands of white enemies coming to destroy me, maybe tens of thousands. He said that they would come within 3 days. I accepted the charm. She read the inscription and insisted that I fold it up and put it in my wallet. When I refused, she asked for my wallet. Carefully folding the paper, she placed it in my wallet. Creator, we ask that you help us. Remind us to stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice. That's why I played that Mahalia, or a part of the reason why I played that Mahalia Jackson to start things off today. Let's see. We did not get any further. We'll have to pick up. We did not get through all of chapter 42, so we'll pick up in the midpoint next week. Let's see. Make sure anything I would like to share. For one, I might play it next week. We have so many things. James Foreman is really a book that is dear to my heart. It had a big impact on me. That is certain. When they start talking about, people died, Rosa Parks and Ella Baker and Dr. King and so many black people changed, the great John Lewis, late great former congressman in Georgia, died and bled so that we could get the right to vote. Hey, James Foreman is in that group too. He wrote a whole book detailed about his experience. He knew all of those people that I just mentioned, and he said explicitly, yes, we went to jail, died, fought, bled to get the right to vote because we thought that would replace white supremacy with justice. We were wrong, obviously. That is not going to solve this problem, so we'll need to do something else. He says that almost verbatim in the book and then goes on to explain all of their brawls and fights to get the right to vote, Monroe being a part of that. But that is such a wonderful book, has such great information, talks about Minister Malcolm X and just a great viewpoint of that whole time period. Great book, great book. Anywho, and like I said, hey, if you don't want to read the whole thing, fine. You can just read the section that's on Robert F. Williams and Monroe, so you can get additional information on what we are hearing about right now. Let's see, going back to 41, where we picked up at for the second audio segment. What notes did I highlight quickly? Slim Brundage, I bet you he has an FBI file that's extensive. Might even be one of those FBI plants. Not all white people's is racist. He's your slick white, especially if you're going to hop in. Hey, Brother Robert, you need to try loving white people. You sound like a total race soldier. Let me see your FBI file. Let's see. All of these scaredy cats and pacifists, you need to be at the juke joint that teacher owns. Hey, don't you smack that black female upside the head. Pacifist, brother, pacifist. Man, don't you smack that black brother upside the head. Pacifist. We don't beat up on no black people, males or female. We don't. Matter of fact, we don't do no corporal punishment either. Don't you be no hypocrite now and just say, we are strictly pacifists for white people. We don't do nothing. Whitey can do no wrong, and even if they are wrong, we got to be nonviolent. Now, anybody else, your woman done spent a little bit too much money. You gone upside her head if you did. What? You sound like the race soldiers. You sound like Jesse Helms Sr. and them. We gonna wait to go find an isolated black female, and we ain't gonna. I don't want no trouble with Rob now. He might have the gun. He about 230 pounds. I don't want no trouble with Rob. Where's that old black female that weigh about 90 pounds, dripping wet, that's almost 50 years? Yeah, that's yeah. Get over here, wench. Ha ha. Let's see. This part, I don't know who this person was who just got out of prison. When he said, I was just in central prison for killing a son of a bitch, my thought process was, you had to have killed a black person. There is no way they're going to have some black dude. We heard what happened to Benny Montgomery. I know what happens when you kill a white man in North Carolina during this time period. So, you had to have killed a black brother. You killed a black dude, and they done let you out of prison that quick. Now, you see, now, I wish they had this person's name. We could confirm. We could go check the record and see exactly who this was, who did they kill, because they would have the race there, how long was the sentence. But there is no way in the world, whoever this person was, yelling out, you cracker motherfucker and all that, there is no way. Ain't that Dr. Welsing, the MFer? There is no way that you killed a white man and they let you out of jail before you were 80 years old and toothless with dementia. There is no way they gonna let you out where you are virile and spunky enough to threaten to kill another white person. Ain't no way in the Christ. Let's see. When they went to get Dr. Perry, or Reverend Perry, when they went to get Mr. Williams' bond, and the judge said, you don't want to go on that boy's bond. That boy's a troublemaker. We not men and women, boys and gals. And that's still today, 2026. Let's see. Evidently, the NAACP had gone to such lengths. Oh, that right there. That, again, that Joel Spingarn, this is an organization that is dominated directly, indirectly by racist man, racist woman, racist child. That could be a part of the military intelligence apparatus. And to make sure, racial showcasing. White people didn't put this out, that this Rob is some wild, crazy, radical communist coon. Black people said that. The NAACP said this. See? Even more so than black people. Wow. The NAACP say Rob is wild. I don't know, man. Master deceivers. It starts chapter 42. Rob said, blacks had been beaten down for so long, had turned the other cheek, sometimes cringing in the face of racist brutality and abdicating the responsibility of defending their homes, women, and children, that even just-minded whites gloried in our spunk. WTF. I don't even know what that means. Can we get names? Who are these just-minded whites? Who are you talking about? And what do you mean gloried in our spunk? Like, what? What? You'd have to give me that in, like, massive detail. Like, what? It does not take much for that. Not all white people are racist. Let's see. He said, never before had the town witnessed whites living in the homes with blacks. That didn't impress me because he already said white people bragged about raping black females. If I got my penis in you, we can't get much closer in terms of physical proximity. So maybe I didn't stay overnight, But I mean, white people and black people, we have been in close physical proximity for a long time. That has not replaced white supremacy with justice. So staying in the house, that didn't, that ain't nothing to celebrate for Gus T. I think Sally Hemings probably stayed in the same room overnight with Thomas Jefferson a time or two, don't you think? Virginia is contiguous to North Carolina, yes, last time I checked. He said as much and as long as Afro-Americans had suffered at the hands of violently oppressive whites, they opened up their hearts and homes to the brave young whites who had come to lay their lives on the line in a cause to dignify a flawed and compromised American way of life. I don't really know what that means, but man, I do not encourage opening up home and heart to people classified as white, even if they say they are an ally with good intentions and just-minded. Dangerous. Rob being told, the problem is that you don't know how to approach these white people. This is from Constance Lever, the British exchange student. I bet she has reports online. I would love to hear, what did she say at the end of all this? Was that her assessment at the end of all this, that the problem is Rob Williams is uncouth and he doesn't know how to talk to people? Was that her closing assessment? The name calling, they say, we want to know if you become one of these Martin Luther Coon pacifists. And they say, well then, are you and your nigger goons? The masters, undisputed champions of name calling, one more time. I love it. His son, Robert Williams, he said he had done all this to keep his son out and hide his son and all that. And they're beating up random 10-year-olds in his son's name. His child said, he said that we were fighting discrimination while discriminating against him because he was little. I said, poor thing. Words are so important. I said, that right there is why you can't go to the protest. We're not fighting discrimination. We're fighting the system of white supremacy racism. That's what we're fighting. And yes, we are discriminating about who can participate in the march because, as you just indicated, your little brain computer isn't even developed. You don't even know what's going on. Sit down. You get killed before you even get your brain developed properly to figure out what we are indeed fighting against, which is not discrimination. Sit down, get a book, and don't tell nobody you're related to Robert Williams. Now, shush. Let's see. And then they start shooting white people. Now, when those white people started getting shot, I'd have been real grim, what they call it, gallows humor. Say, hey, you done been shot in the abdomen. Well, I sure do hope you make it. I tell you what, if you don't make it, we'll tell them it was my fault that I didn't know how to talk to these white people. That's why this happened. What you think? Oh, you don't, that ain't, maybe a little different? What I say? I tell, hey, why they show you better than I can tell you. Let's see. They have lots of info if you want to read more on Yuriko Nakajima. And that is it. That will do us for the first portion. I do find it important that Robert F., once he read what all this said and this prayer and white Jesus and all of that, he smiled, he refolded it, put it back in his wallet. He didn't spit on it. He didn't throw it in the trash. He said, what is this garbage? I'm not with no white Jesus. You done told you. Give me my firearm. He folded it, put it back in his wallet. Sometimes Gus T said, we need all the luck, constructive intervention we can get. We will pick it up here next Friday, midpoint of chapter 42. It was on my brain computer. There is an unsolved, just because I might even play some of it next week. I have to see if it works or not. But either way, maybe I'll play it, maybe I won't. But either way, there is an Unsolved Mysteries segment, Season 2, Episode 15. For grandmother, she used to love her some unsolved mysteries. True crime in North Carolina in the 1980s, so 20 years after the events that we're talking about right here, but Robert F. was still alive and Mabel Williams. There was a carload of black males, privileged. They were deliberately ran off the road, just like what we talked about today, and it killed at least one of them. They never caught the race soldiers, and they think this was a deliberate racist attack just like what we heard today with Robert F. Williams. I'll post it. You all can check it out. It's on YouTube in HD, probably a billion other platforms. But Season 2, Episode 15, it is exactly what we heard today. Never caught these people, and they think it totally was an act of white supremacy with just some race soldiers. Oh, look at those Niggras. Let's kill them. And then ran them off the road. And they weren't even trying to be like Robert F. Williams, I don't think. We'll be here tomorrow. Counter Racist Weekly Review. Making up, we weren't even here last week. Make up for missed time. Feeling a teaspoon better. Sobriety would be better. Hey, Jonathan Farrell, who was not under the influence. Those 4 black males, Unsolved Mystery, Season 2, Episode 15, they were not under the influence. Robert F. Williams almost ran off the road. He was not under the influence. Hadn't been at the juke joint. And they still almost had a fatal road incident. Sobriety would be best so you can make great decisions. Keep yourself safe in a system of white supremacy, which is not safe for people classified as black. Creator, we ask, remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. What about Slim Brundage? Our communist white brothers. Stop saying not all white people are racist. Stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. What about them Uncle Toms? Even the Uncle Toms. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.